Chapter 3601, Level -2 Spiritual Overlord, 3. That's right. Shouldn't Feng Wu be the one facing the lightning tribulation? Why were they the ones doing it? No one could figure it out, but they were indeed helping Feng Wu with the lightning tribulation. Boom! Now that Feng Wu was a Level 2 Spiritual Overlord, the lightning tribulation she triggered was several times more powerful than before. All the lightning bolts were heading toward the spiritual overlords in the courtyard. Why? Why is this happening? Every spiritual overlord was shouting. There were 20 spiritual overlords in the Zhou family, and 10 of them had already fallen to the ground. They had turned into charcoal and were long dead. There were 15 spiritual overlords in the Hua family. 2 of them had died in the previous chaotic battle, and 3 of them had been struck by the lightning tribulation. Only 10 were still alive. Among the itinerant cultivators in the spiritual overlord stage, only 7 were still alive. Now, the second round of lightning tribulation was here. Damn it! It's coming again! Bukong wanted to cry. And it's even more powerful than before. If we can't get out of the Zhou family, we'll be trapped in this quagmire and have to endure the lightning tribulation for Feng Wu. Damn it. Everyone was in pain. They had all gathered together to kill Feng Wu and take her head to Firmament Palace for the reward, but now, why was this happening? Everyone hit the wall. Let's break it down. As long as there's a gap, we can escape. No one wanted to kill Feng Wu right now. All they wanted to do was run away. The desire to escape united everyone. When these 27 spiritual overlords were united, they were a huge force. They attacked the gate in unison. The power of so many spiritual overlords put together was comparable to a spirit saint. Just then, the lightning river stopped for a moment. Everything calmed for a moment, and there was a suffocating dark fear. Zhou Ming couldn't hide his excitement. Did the lightning tribulation stop? Everyone turned to look at Feng Wu. Right now, Feng Wu was still sitting on the roof, her clothes fluttering in the wind. She looked cold and beautiful. Her originally bloated body had already returned to normal. Her eyes were tightly shut, and she looked like a goddess descending from heaven. She was beautiful and noble. So, has that girl completed her breakthrough? Bukong asked expectantly. The surroundings were extremely quiet. They weren't the only ones who were guessing. Many people were shocked by the activity in the Zhou family today. Because the battle was confined to the Zhou family's house, ordinary people didn't feel anything. However, cultivators did. The more powerful a cultivator was, the sharper their senses would be. At this moment, they all flew toward the Zhou family and watched from afar. They didn't get close because they didn't want to alarm either side of the battle, in case they were dragged in. Outside the Zhou family's house, Yu Minji and a group of spiritual overlords were guarding the formation, astonished by Feng Wu's power. From the moment they threatened to destroy the Feng clan, Feng Wu had taken control of the situation and killed nearly 20 spiritual overlords. That was a heroic act that made everyone excited. Although she didn't kill them herself. She was just a spiritual king at first. General Gao didn't know what to say. Both he and General Yuan had been selected from the Imperial Guards and assigned by the Crown Prince to protect Feng Wu. At first, they weren't happy about the arrangement because spiritual overlords shouldn't be guarding a teenage girl. Chapter 3602, Level 2 Spiritual Overlord 4. If it weren't for the fact that Jun Linyuan was very powerful and overbearing, the two of them would have quit their job. After they followed Feng Wu around, they saw how busy the girl was and how many tricks she had up her sleeve. General Gao had even laughed at her for using tricks because she wasn't strong enough. In the end, true strength was what mattered in this world. General Gao admitted that he had had some opinions about Feng Wu before, but now he felt he had been slapped in the face. She had only been a spiritual king, but after a series of mysterious actions, she had already killed more than 20 spiritual overlords. The Zhou family, the Hua family, and the hired spiritual overlords all wanted to kill her, but things turned out to be the other way around. General Gao asked, how did she make all that happen? General Yuan was so impressed by Feng Wu that he almost fell to his knees. He kept praising her. I told you before, didn't I? Feng Wu is amazing, but you didn't believe me. In fact, you only need to think about what kind of person the crown prince is. How can he fall for an ordinary person? General Gao was still very proud. There are still more than 20 people alive. Let's see how she deals with them. This round won't be as easy. General Yuan had a headache when he saw the 20-odd spiritual overlord in the Zhou family's yard. I think little Feng Wu has a way. They were not the only ones watching this battle. All the aristocratic families in the imperial capital were paying attention. So were the people in the palace. Standing on Star Pavilion, Emperor Wu clasped his hands behind his back and watched the Zhou family closely. It was the tallest building in the palace and in the imperial capital. Standing here, one could see the scenery of the entire city. At that moment, Emperor Wu was holding a long tube in his right hand and watching everything in the Zhou family's yard with his left eye half closed. Others might not be able to see it clearly, but Emperor Wu had the divine instrument in his hand, so he could see everything through the formation embedded in it. Emperor Wu couldn't help but smile when he saw Feng Wu, who was sitting the roof, and the spiritual overlords who had been defeated by the lightning tribulation. How naughty! That's so satisfying. That's because your Majesty treats her well, Master Gao said with a smile. Your Majesty, you sent someone to protect her. Emperor Wu waved his hand. She's a tough girl. She didn't use those men I gave her. Master Gao smiled. Your Majesty, those aren't the only ones you sent. Don't forget the spiritual saint hiding in the dark. Emperor Wu said grumpily, she's the only crown prince consort I'll ever acknowledge. I can't just stand by and watch her get killed. Of course, I have to protect her. Emperor Wu said, by the way, is Jun Linyuan back yet? I've already helped him so much. If he doesn't make it in time for the feast, I'm going to be so mad. Master Gao pursed his lips and smiled. I've already tried my best to rush him. I'll definitely make it. That's good. Emperor Wu clicked his tongue as he continued watching. I didn't expect this girl to be able to kill more than 20 spiritual overlords on her own. That's as many as the Imperial College has accumulated since it was established, Emperor Wu boasted to Master Gao. Master Gao nodded with a smile. By the way, how is the Empress Dowager? Chapter 3603, Her Tribulation L. Emperor Wu asked Master Gao as he stared at the Zhou family's yard. Master Gao smiled bitterly. Ever since Her Majesty came home, she hasn't been in good health. She wakes up from nightmares from time to time. Master Chu has been waiting on her, but he said... Emperor Wu frowned at Master Gao. Master Gao smiled bitterly. Master Chu says there's nothing he can do, and only Miss Feng Wu can help. Emperor Wu stared at Master Gao. If that's the case, how could Xiao Wu not know why my mother went to the Hua family? Master Gao said, that's right. Emperor Wu waved his hand impatiently. Let's wait until this is over. Xiao Wu is in danger herself. Master Gao was confused. Didn't His Majesty send a top expert to protect Miss Feng Wu? Emperor Wu frowned. There were some things that no one could take on for her. The Zhou family. When the lightning river stopped pouring down, everyone looked surprised, thinking that they had been saved. But right at that moment, holy crap! Is Feng Wu even human? She's trying to break through to level 3 of the spiritual overlord stage. She's trying to rise to another level. Is she crazy? That's just insane. Why did she make a breakthrough so quickly? Isn't she worried that her body can't keep up? Isn't she worried that she'll be struck by lightning? This is defying the heavens. No, the most important thing is, why did she make so many breakthroughs in one go? Why? Everyone else had been slowly making progress one level at a time, but this girl, how was she able to do that? Everyone had gone crazy. Earlier, when Feng Wu had reached level 1 of the spiritual overlord stage, she had caused a huge commotion with that sea of lightning that had poured down on them. They had already lost more than 20 spiritual overlords. Everyone, bombard this door. Hurry up. All the spiritual overlords went crazy. Hua Yu and Zhuo Ming had been mortal enemies, but now they were working together. Everyone was asking Zhuo Ming how to solve the formation, and they were all sweating profusely. Their voices were urgent, and they looked anxious. Zhuo Ming was on the verge of tears. I have no idea. The Zhuo family's formation isn't like this. Wait this moment, the black thunderstorm that had been brewing in the sky for a long time rumbled, and thunderbolts poured down. Before, it was still like a river that chased after everyone and shot them. Now, it wasn't like that anymore. Lightning poured down like rain. Little Phoenix turned pale in fright. It curled up in Feng Wu's arms and looked out. This sea of lightning formed a net, which was an abnormal phenomenon. This girl was going to cause big trouble. Oh my God, this girl is crazy. Stop. I don't want to die. The spiritual overlord's flesh and blood were blasted into pieces by the thunderstorm. However, they were imprisoned in this courtyard and couldn't escape. It was too terrifying. Emperor Wu's heart skipped a beat. He subconsciously looked at the sky. How could this thunderstorm be so terrifying? By the time this thunderstorm ended, there was no longer anyone standing. Every single one of these 20-odd spiritual overlords had their flesh split open by the lightning. The pain was unbearable, and their bodies seemed to have been charred black. Although they couldn't move, they were still alive. Bukong was so frustrated. Chapter 3604, Her Tribulation, 2. More than 40 spiritual overlords had actually suffered a crushing defeat when dealing with a teenage girl whose strength was far inferior to theirs. How furious they must be! Bukong immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, which instantly turned into black water. Bukong said, "Feng Wu." He wanted to speak, but just as he opened his mouth, the breath he exhaled carried the smell of charred flesh. Bukong was speechless. Was she really the chosen one? Was there really no one who could go against her? Would anyone who went against her be struck by lightning? A look of reverence appeared on Bukong's face. Right at that moment, suddenly, an incomparably huge hole appeared in the sky. Everyone looked up at the sky, only to see that there seemed to be something surging in the hole. What was that? Bukong felt so terrified that he was trembling. If he could, all he wanted to do now was run away. Neither killing Feng Wu nor the spirit diagram sword was more important than his life. Feng Wu was still sitting on the roof, her clothes fluttering in the wind, but her expression was turning grim. She wasn't the only one. Little Phoenix looked grim as well. Little Phoenix sighed and complained, "I told you to take it easy and not make too many breakthroughs in one go, but you didn't listen and insisted on making the breakthroughs. They can help you withstand the lightning tribulation, but how much can they withstand? It should be your lightning tribulation, and you have to bear it yourself." Feng Wu didn't say anything, but it was obvious that her face was getting grimmer. Looking at the hole in the dark sky, Little Phoenix was on the verge of tears. "It's a sea of lightning. My little girl, it's a sea of lightning. You won't be able to withstand it. It's over, it's really over." As Little Phoenix had said, the hole was getting bigger and bigger. In the end, the dark clouds above the Zhuo family's head were almost all gone. In the sky, there was a black sea of lightning that could cover the Zhuo family. Electric arcs flashed, and thunderstorms surged. Whoosh! An electric current flashed and dripped to the ground. It jumped on a spiritual overlord, and he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood from the pain. Everyone was dumbfounded. This is a purple electric arc. This electric arc is much stronger than before. Is the sea of purple lightning coming down? Look, it's aiming at Feng Wu. This time, it's not aiming at us, but at Feng Wu. Is Feng Wu's lightning tribulation finally here? Bukong took a deep breath and a look of ecstasy appeared on his face. He knew it. How could she be the chosen one? She had made so many breakthroughs in one go. How could there be no heavenly tribulation? It wasn't that there weren't any, but that they were too powerful and came late. Feng Wu, she couldn't take it. Not only did Bukong think so, but the spiritual overlords outside the Zhuo family also thought so. Tears welled up in Yu Minji's eyes. He tried his best to rush in, but as a junior spiritual overlord he couldn't get in. Xiao Wu, please don't die. Yu Minji's eyes were bloodshot. He pounded his chest with his right hand and wailed. The Dugu family. Patriarch Gudu, who had been paying attention to this battle, slowly exhaled. Next to him sat the old master of the family. Father, it seems that Feng Wu won't be able to get away with it, Patriarch Dugu said. Old Master Dugu nodded. This child is too proud. How can nature allow such a person who destroys the rules of nature to survive? Chapter 3605. Her Tribulation, 3. Old Master Dugu's expression was indifferent as he said coldly, such a person will definitely die. There's no justice if she lives. His son smiled. Feng Wu was finally going to die. He had gone from a level 8 spiritual king to level 3 spiritual overlord in one go. What kind of talent was that? Even Jun Linyuan hadn't made such a leap back then. She had to die. Master Dugu heaved a sigh of relief. However, Emperor Wu's pupils contracted. He couldn't bring himself to see his daughter-in-law, who was supposed to have the divine phoenix blood, die. But no one could save her. The only one who could save her. No, there was no one left in this world that could save her. Feng Wu looked up and saw the sea of lightning crackling in the sky. Purple electric arcs were sizzling. Drip, drip, drip. The electric arcs began to fall intermittently. Whoosh! A sea of lightning poured down on Feng Wu. Finally it was here. Taking a deep breath, Little Phoenix told Feng Wu loudly, I'll teach you the lightning technique. Remember, follow the instructions and direct the lightning into your body. Anyway, remember, no matter how painful it is, you have to stick to it. Yes. Feng Wu nodded. The path of lightning is like drawing a bow. The capable ones will suppress it, and the lightning technique was the most powerful thunder element skill in the world, and Little Phoenix didn't know about it at first. However, as if someone had clicked a button on its head, Little Phoenix suddenly heard the chant. It recalled when it saw Master Mu use the lightning technique back then. The lightning kept striking down, and Feng Wu was in pain. Gritting her teeth, she prompted Little Phoenix, keep going. Little Phoenix went on reciting the lightning technique to Feng Wu. It was communicated through Feng Wu's mind, which was why no one else knew about its presence. They only saw Feng Wu, who had been buried by the lightning. Feng Wu is dead. Bukong stared at the roof where Feng Wu couldn't be seen anymore. They could only see the surging lightning. Hua Huayu was elated. Are you sure she's dead? Zhuo Ming was equally elated. The thunderstorm didn't kill them. Right now they were charred black, but they were still breathing. However, they couldn't move. One of Bukong's arms was gone, and he smelled like burnt flesh. There was a murderous look in his eyes. Don't you remember? The lightning that hit us just then was nowhere nearly as powerful as this one, but look at what we've become. Almost all the spiritual overlords were lying motionlessly on the ground. It was hard to tell if they were still alive. Bukong said, Feng Wu is nowhere near as capable as we are. How can she be all right? Her bones are probably charred by the explosion. What a pity, Bukong shook his head. She's so talented and the only person comparable to Jun Linyuan. She's dead just like that. Bukong looked revered. Before, he really thought that Feng Wu was just an ordinary girl, but after seeing her make 4 or 5 breakthroughs in a row, he finally realized how talented she was. We've killed a genius that's as talented as Jun Linyuan. That's something we can brag about for the rest of our lives. Bukong smiled bitterly. The black and white priest asked indifferently, did you forget the part where she almost killed all 40 of us? Chapter 3606. Her Tribulation, 4. Bukong didn't know what to say. Is it possible that Feng Wu isn't dead? Zhuo Ming frowned. Everyone looked at him as if he was an idiot. That's impossible. A thunderstorm like this can melt even a man made of iron, let alone someone like Feng Wu. Bukong shook his head. She has to be dead by now. Was Feng Wu really dead? Following Little Phoenix's instruction, Feng Wu activated the thunder element in her body and covered herself with a thin layer of it, temporarily blocking out the lightning. But it would only be for a little while. Small streaks of lightning kept seeping into her body, and the pain was indescribable. Feng Wu felt as if her bones had been burnt to a crisp. The lightning seemed to have burnt her skin off. All Feng Wu could do was follow Little Phoenix's instructions and cultivate according to the lightning technique. However, there were simply too many lightning bolts, and it was too powerful for Feng Wu to handle. Feng Wu's skin was burnt, repaired, and burnt again. However, with each repair, the power she could withstand gradually increased, although it wasn't obvious. But it hurt. Every time her skin was torn open, Feng Wu felt as if she was going to be torn to pieces. The pain almost killed her, and she couldn't stop trembling. In the end, Feng Wu lost consciousness and couldn't hold on much longer. "Feng Wu, wake up, Feng Wu." Little Phoenix kept calling her name and jumping around in her head, trying to wake her up. "Don't go to sleep. You'll be dead. Master Mu is waiting for you. Didn't you feel you owed him? He'll never wake up if you're dead." Just when Feng Wu thought that the thunder was going to melt her, Little Phoenix's voice woke her up. That was right. Her beautiful master was still waiting for her to save him, and she couldn't die. Ding! A drop of divine phoenix blood flew out of Feng Wu's forehead and hovered around her. The divine phoenix blood brought out ancient inscriptions that shone with a faint golden light and landed on Feng Wu's body. As the words appeared, something amazing happened. There was less lightning liquid on her. How could that happen? Little Phoenix was astonished as well, for the violent lightning liquid had flowed into the small hole between Feng Wu's eyebrows, where the divine phoenix blood used to be. Everything was sucked in at an incredible speed. Little Phoenix was shocked. What's going on? Why did the divine phoenix blood direct the lightning liquid to your forehead? Do you feel anything? Feng Wu was drifting in and out of consciousness. She didn't feel much. She only felt a burning sensation between her eyebrows as if her head was going to explode. OMG! Just then Little Phoenix cried out. Feng Wu had been in so much pain that she couldn't even move a finger. She could only look at Little Phoenix without saying a word. "Is the divine phoenix blood storing the lightning liquid for you and turning it into your eye of lightning?" Feng Wu asked. "What do you mean?" Little Phoenix said, "Aren't you practicing the lightning technique? It's a manual, but you haven't learned the stances yet. That's what the divine phoenix blood is teaching you. It's going to swallow the lightning liquid and turn it into your skill." Chapter 3607, Level 3 Spiritual Overlord 1. Feng Wu said, "I don't really understand." Little Phoenix said, "Imagine when you're going to hit someone. The third eye on your forehead will open, and lightning will shoot out. How does that feel?" Feng Wu was amazed, and that indeed sounded great. "But won't that turn me into Shiva?" Feng Wu looked curiously at Little Phoenix. Little Phoenix asked, "What's Shiva?" Feng Wu said, "Well, it's someone with a third eye. Won't it be ugly?" Little Phoenix wanted to poke Feng Wu in the head, but it couldn't, so it said grumpily, "Did you see any mark when you obtained the divine phoenix blood?" Feng Wu shook her head. Little Phoenix said, "Don't worry. It won't leave any trace. It'll be your most lethal weapon." Feng Wu came back to her senses. "How do you know about the lightning technique? And why can you teach it to me?" Little Phoenix said proudly, "Don't I recover my memory all the time? Consider yourself lucky. When I saw this sea of lightning, I was so worried that I remembered the lightning technique. Otherwise, you would have been dead by now." As the divine phoenix blood put the thunder liquid into Feng Wu's forehead, the lightning around Feng Wu grew less and less. In the end, there was only a thin layer of electric current around her. Shit. Feng Wu is... She's still here? How can she still be alive? Bukong stared at the girl on the roof in disbelief. She was still there, and even her bright red dress was flapping in the wind. She closed her eyes, revealing her fair skin that was as smooth as jade. Was she still alive? All the spiritual overlords in the Zhou family's courtyard stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. They held their breaths, and their hearts raced. The people outside the courtyard watched this in astonishment as well. Yu Minji stopped yelling. Feng Sun stopped banging his head on the wall. Emperor Wu was over the moon. The Dugu family. Father, Feng Wu is... Master Dugu looked at his father in disbelief and hesitated. There was a water pattern in front of them, which clearly reflected everything that was going on in the Zhou family's courtyard. Old Master Dugu was an old man with drooping eyelids. However, he was staring at Feng Wu in disbelief. The lightning technique. She's cultivating it. Old Master Dugu stared at Feng Wu's forehead, and his pupils contracted. My father is overreacting, Master Dugu thought to himself. At the old man's age, the only people that could affect his mood were spiritual saints. How could Feng Wu make him so agitated? Father, is Feng Wu really dead? Master Dugu asked curiously. Instead of answering him, old Master Dugu murmured, why did the lightning technique and the spirit diagram sword resurface in the imperial capital? Is God Mu still alive? Dugu Ju was shocked and stared at his father without saying anything. God Mu was someone of an entirely different level that Dugu Ju couldn't participate in the subject. His father said, both techniques resurface in the imperial capital, and Feng Wu is involved in both incidents. Can she really have a connection with God Mill? Chapter 3608, Level 3 Spiritual Overlord, 2. Dugu Ju's heart skipped a beat. If that were the case, Feng Wu must be a terrifying existence that couldn't be offended. Old Master Dugu said, now I hope Feng Wu isn't dead. But she should be dead, right? Before he could finish, Feng Wu slowly opened her eyes. Her eyes seemed to have been washed in ice. They were as cold as water and as bright as the stars. In the courtyard. She's opened her eyes. Her eyes are moving. She's not dead. How is that possible? Even we spiritual overlords can't withstand the sea of lightning. Why can she? And she's not injured. I don't believe it. Was Feng Wu unharmed? In fact, the injuries in her body were unprecedentedly serious. The endless sea of lightning surged into her body, burning her blood vessels, meridians, and internal organs. Everything washed over, shattered, and healed over and over again. Death by 1,000 cuts was nothing. What Feng Wu had just experienced was countless times more painful. Although she looked fine on the outside, in fact, her body was still constantly cracking and healing. She couldn't even say a word, let alone move. Little Phoenix was worried about Feng Wu. How are you? Feng Wu said, the worst part is over. It won't hurt any more than before. Little Phoenix nodded. But something worse has happened. Feng Wu said, what's that? You can't move, but those spiritual overlords are still alive. Little Phoenix pointed at them. After this series of thunderstorms, there were still more than 20 spiritual overlords who survived. Little Phoenix said, they're still in shock, but they'll come back to their senses soon. Without the protection of the lightning sea, you're a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Feng Wu only smiled and said nothing. The spiritual overlords on the ground seemed to have realized what was going on. Zhuoming frowned. Hua Huayu also took a deep breath. I see how incredible she is now. She can even survive that kind of lightning. How can we kill her? Bukong stared at Feng Wu and noticed something. Feng Wu's expression hadn't changed since she opened her eyes, and she hadn't moved at all. Did that mean she couldn't move? Bukong was used to risking his life for opportunities, and this time was no exception. Feng Wu's head is mine. Anyone wants to compete with me? Everyone looked at Bukong as if he was retarded. He still wanted to take Feng Wu's head for his reward? Didn't he know what kind of person Feng Wu was? No one would fight with Bukong because they themselves were lying on the ground and couldn't move. The black and white priest stared at Bukong. Don't be too greedy. Bukong said fiercely, I still have some spiritual essence left. I'm at the peak of the spiritual overlord stage. How can I not be able to deal with a level 3 spiritual overlord? Besides, I think Feng Wu is at the end of her rope. Don't worry. As he spoke, Bukong forced himself to stand up. Little Phoenix saw him. Chapter 3609, Level 3 Spiritual Overlord 3. Little Phoenix's face darkened. He's standing up. This peak spiritual overlord can still fight. I didn't expect him to be hiding his strength. These spiritual overlords are so scheming. Bukong trudged toward Feng Wu. He looked up at Feng Wu cautiously. It was obvious that he was in awe of Feng Wu. Everyone was looking at Feng Wu and Bukong, as was everyone else. Bukong, who was at the peak of the spiritual overlord stage, looked at Feng Wu, who had just reached level 3. Feng Wu said to Little Phoenix, "Go undo the formation." These people were already seriously injured, but the dozen or so spiritual overlords she had left outside were still unharmed. Little Phoenix nodded, then quietly jumped out of Feng Wu's arms and went to work on the formation. However, there was a time lag before the formation could be deactivated, and it would take at least 5 minutes. Would Feng Wu be able to stop Bukong's attack during that time? There were still many spiritual overlords here. What if a few of them still had the strength to fight? No matter how weak they were, if any of them were willing to fight to the death, Feng Wu would be doomed. Little Phoenix panicked a little and tried to deactivate the formation faster. The formation that Feng Wu had set up was so complicated that Little Phoenix couldn't solve it on its own. Feng Wu had to communicate with it through her mind and tell it the steps in detail. In order to prevent the spiritual overlords from escaping, Feng Wu had been ruthless to both them and herself. Even if she hadn't found the pool of spirit essence, she could still have used the box of blood source crystals. It was taken from the Hua family. Feng Wu had planned to use the Hua family's blood source crystals to upgrade herself to level 1 of the spiritual overlord stage, but the spiritual marrow turned out to be more efficient, and she was now a level 3 spiritual overlord. Move 3 inches to the left and place 2 spirit stones. Put 3 spiritual rocks on each spot of the 5 elements. The 4 directions are marked by 4 divine beasts. Find the map I drew previously and put blood source crystals in their mouths. Yes, it must be blood source crystals. Feng Wu had to devote at least 70% of her energy to teaching Little Phoenix how to break the formation. She couldn't move a muscle. However, Bukong was less than 10 meters away from her. Bukong looked Feng Wu up and down, his eyes full of curiosity. He had a stone in his hand and was ready to throw it at any moment. "Your name?" Staring at the man in front of her, Feng Wu finally spoke. Feng Wu was the first to break the silence, and Bukong was overjoyed. The first to break the silence would be the loser. So, Feng Wu really couldn't move. Staring at Feng Wu, Bukong took another step forward. "I'm Bukong." "Who was Bukong?" Feng Wu looked at him and shook her head. "I've never heard of you." Bukong's expression froze. This girl was showing him now respect. She really wasn't afraid of offending him. Bukong smirked, making a mental note of Feng Wu's provocative tone. He then asked, "How on earth did you dodge the sea of lightning? Do you have a lightning-repelling weapon?" For a moment, everyone's attention was attracted by Bukong's words. A lightning-repelling weapon. A divine artifact. That was enough to make all the cultivators in the world jealous. Even a spiritual saint would want to snatch it. Chapter 3610, Level 3 Spiritual Overlord 4. Feng Wu suddenly smiled. I didn't know that a peak spiritual overlord would have to make up a story to turn me into the target of public criticism. "Bukong, are you that afraid of me?" Bukong's expression was extremely ugly. He didn't expect this girl to still be able to answer coherently. Was she really not injured? As a matter of fact, what Bukong didn't know was that the lightning waves were still washing over Feng Wu's internal organs. It was so painful that Feng Wu almost couldn't control herself. Even breathing was painful, let alone talking or smiling. Feng Wu was able to keep a straight face because of her incredible self-control. Bukong couldn't tell what Feng Wu was capable of, so he had to test her. "I'm afraid of you? Don't make me laugh." As he spoke, Bukong threw the stone at the pillar under Feng Wu. He didn't hit Feng Wu because he was too big of a target. What if Feng Wu killed him instead? He was so badly injured that he couldn't even handle a level 3 spiritual overlord's attack. Everyone stared at the small stone that Bukong had thrown. They were waiting to see Feng Wu's reaction. However, there was a loud bang. The pillar in the room that Feng Wu was sitting on couldn't hold it anymore, and it collapsed. Feng Wu, who had been sitting on the roof, also fell from above. Everyone widened their eyes at the scene in front of them. Feng Wu didn't even try to block the rock and just let it smash into the house. Moreover, after the house collapsed, Feng Wu didn't fly away. Instead, she collapsed along with the house. Dust filled the air. When the dust settled, everyone saw that Feng Wu was still sitting on the pile of rubble with her cross-legged. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. The power of lightning in her body was almost completely absorbed by the divine phoenix blood, but there was only the last bit left. Her internal organs were badly damaged, and if she could dissect them, she would find that they were charred. Feng Wu could even smell the burning inside of her. That had to be painful as hell. It was so painful that it was as if every piece of flesh on her body was being roasted over a fire. What kind of pain was that? Feng Wu couldn't find the words to describe it. All she could say was that she had never experienced such pain in her life. However, she still needed to spend a lot of effort teaching Little Phoenix how to solve the formation. She also needed to deceive Bukong and the group of injured people in front of her. Once she showed weakness, these people would pounce on her like hungry wolves and tear her into pieces with their last bit of strength. Now, these spiritual overlords were already sitting cross-legged and repairing their bodies. It was only a matter of time before they recovered enough to fight. Bukong smirked when he saw Feng Wu fall to the ground, unable to fight back. "I thought you were so powerful, but you're just so." Bukong smirked and took a few more steps forward, getting closer and closer to Feng Wu. The other people in the venue looked vexed. Especially the two heads of the Hua family and the Zhou family. I was really fooled by Feng Wu. If I had known that she was faking it, I wouldn't have given this opportunity to Bukong. The others had the same thought. At this moment, they were extremely regretful. But at this moment, Bukong was very pleased with himself. Chapter 3611, The Third Eye, 1. Little girl, since you're already exposed, fulfill my wish. Feng Wu frowned. What do you mean? Bukong said, I've already said that I'm going to kill you, a peerless genius who's as talented as Jun Linyuan, to make my name known because I'll be able to brag about this for the rest of my life. So, you're going to make my wish come true. With that, Bukong closed in on Feng Wu again. Having tested Feng Wu before, he was much bolder now. He was only 3 steps away from her. He could pick Feng Wu up with one hand. Little Phoenix was so anxious, but it was still trying to undo the formation according to Feng Wu's instructions. According to Feng Wu, it was 90% done. She wouldn't have to wait much longer. However, Bukong had already attacked. He opened his palm, and a huge axe appeared in his hand. Bukong didn't take out his life-bound weapon from the beginning, but now that he had finally used it, it was obvious that he was still very wary of Feng Wu. Die! Bukong raised his battle axe high. The body of the axe was 1/2 meter long, and the blade was very sharp. If Feng Wu was struck, her head would be cut off. Xiao Wu! Feng Wi! Yu Minji's eyes were bloodshot. Feng Sun banged his head against the wall in frustration. The spiritual saint sent by Emperor Wu, who had been hiding in the dark, was finally ready to make his move. He had been unwilling to make a move because if he did, it would attract the attention of the other spiritual saints. A spiritual saint would be breaking the rules if they participated in the spiritual overlord's battle. Once the rules were broken, it would cause great damage to the cultivation of this spiritual saint and attract other spiritual saints. That was why he had kept himself hidden until Feng Wu's life was in danger. At that critical moment, whoosh! Feng Wu opened her eyes. It wasn't her beautiful eyes, but the spot between her eyebrows that Little Phoenix had mentioned. The divine phoenix blood had been resting between Feng Wu's eyebrows, but now, a ball of lightning and fire was spewing out. Puff! Thunder spat out like a spear. From a close distance, it hit Bukong between his eyebrows. Bukong panicked and tried to avoid it. However, he was too close and couldn't react in time. Therefore, although he managed to not let the lightning hit his forehead, his right eye was still shot. Ah! Bukong let out a miserable scream. He lost his grip on the bat leaks, and it fell to the ground with a clang. As for himself, he rolled on the ground and flew away from Feng Wu. He covered his right eye with both hands and was in extreme pain. Everyone was shocked by this sudden incident. Zuoming said, "Feng Wu still has a trump card at this stage. Is she even human?" He felt so sorry for his daughter. What could she do against such an opponent? Hua Huayu also looked like he was about to collapse. Is this girl unkillable? There's an eye between her eyebrows. She can even shoot out lightning? No wonder she's not afraid of what happened earlier. It turns out that the lightning was absorbed between her eyebrows. The others also looked at Feng Wu in shock. They had never dreamed that a person could store lightning between their eyebrows. But because of that, they finally understood why Feng Wu wasn't afraid of lightning. Chapter 36:12. The Third Eye 2. However, they had confused the cause with the effect. Feng Wu had only learned the lightning technique today, which was why she had the third eye. But it didn't matter. The most important thing was that Bukong was sent flying away by Feng Wu's eye. He was covering his eye and wailing. That hurt, and it wasn't just pain. The black and white priest pushed Bukong's hands away and saw that his right eye had exploded. Blood was gushing out and he couldn't stop it no matter what. His head was almost pierced through, so there was no way to save that eye. The black and white priest wasn't doing well either, for he was the most powerful cultivator here, and the lightning tribulation had affected him the most. As a result, he had less than 10% of his original capability left. He had stored the spiritual essence to deal with Feng Wu, but now, it could only be used to treat Bukong. Bukong panted in pain, but he was still shouting, "Feng Wu is like an arrow at the end of its flight. She's not going to make it. Let's kill her together." About 20 spiritual overlords were severely injured after the lightning tribulation, and only a few were able to move around. Hearing what Bukong said, they turned to look at Feng Wu. Bukong shouted, "Kill her! Kill her now! Don't you want to take revenge for your friends and brothers? She brought the lightning tribulation here on purpose. She deliberately set up a trap in the Zhou family and used a formation to keep all of us inside. She then used the external force to rise to the spiritual overlord stage and triggered the lightning tribulation. It was all her plan. No one would have believed it before. But now, they had no choice but to believe it. Exactly how terrifying was Feng Wu? Hua Huayu stared at Feng Wu. "You're so young but you're already so vicious. What will you do when you grow up?" Feng Wu knew that little Phoenix would be done soon, and all she needed to do now was stall. The best way to do that was to talk. Although every word Feng Wu said made her shudder in pain, she still smiled calmly. "Hua Huayu, how dare you say such things about me? Have you forgotten what your family is up to?" Feng Wu smirked. Hua Huayu who was going to charge toward Feng Wu, but he shuddered at those words. An unbelievable idea struck him that couldn't be. Feng Wu couldn't have known. However, Feng Wu only chuckled. "Your mother is the vicious one. She wants to wipe out the entire Feng clan." "How did you know that?" Hua Huayu stared at Feng Wu. Zuoming stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu said, "What are you staring at? The Zhou family is just as bad. The Hua family and the Zhou family have joined hands to destroy the Feng clan. Didn't your father and mother tell you that?" Zuoming glared at Feng Wu. "Who told you that?" Feng Wu said, "What do you think? Obviously, I have someone in your manor. As for who they are you all idiots? How many people know about this plan?" Zuoming turned around and stared at the chief elder of the Zhou family. The chief elder was very capable. He was at the peak of the spiritual overlord stage and was about the same level as the black and white priest. Chapter 36:13, The Third Eye 3. The lightning tribulation had backfired on him as well, and he was lying motionlessly on the ground. Hua Yu stared at Feng Wu. "You're trying to drive a wedge between us." Feng Wu chuckled. "Not only do I know that the Hua family wants to destroy my clan, but I also know that your vaults have been ransacked." Hua Yu's heart raced. Quite a few people might know that the Hua family's treasures had been stolen, but only a handful knew that both the treasure halls had been robbed. Hua Yu stared at his younger brother, Hua Wu. Hua Wuin's stomach lurched, and he had a bad feeling. Hua Yu stared at Feng Wu. "How do you know that? Are you the robber? Did you do all those things to the Hua family?" Little Phoenix said anxiously, "Buy us some time. I'll only need a few moments before deactivating the formation." Feng Wu smiled at Hua Yu. "What are you referring to? The incident where Hua Wushuang cut off Zhuo Qingxi's body part? Or when Mrs. Hua poisons Zhuo Qingxi so that no one could testify to it? Or the fact that the Zhuo family has kidnapped Hua Wushuang to question her about the spirit diagram sword? Or that the Hua family tried to destroy the Feng clan to frame the Zhuo family? The Hua family has also decided to slander the Zhuo family for having the spiritual diagram sword and use the itinerant cultivators of the Zhuo family? And there's so much more." Everyone stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. Especially Zhuo Ming and Hua Yu. Zhuo Ming was the head of the Zhuo family, and Hua Yu was the head of the Hua family. Many things could be kept from other people, but not from them, for they were the ones who carried out the plan. Zhuo Ming stared at Hua Yu. "So, the Zhuo family is slandering the Hua family for having the spirit diagram sword. You've brought so many people here to destroy us. No wonder you wouldn't listen to my explanation. Damn it." Hua Yu said, "Why did the Zhuo family kidnap Wushuang?" Zhuo Ming said, "Zhuo Qingxi is dead." Hua Yu said, "We didn't do it. It was indeed the Hua family." Feng Wu smiled at Hua Yu and said solemnly, "I'm telling the truth." Hua Yu smirked. Feng Wu only gave him a half-smile. Hua Wuin didn't dare to meet Feng Wu's eyes. An idea struck him, and he stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu chuckled. "Don't you want to know the truth about Zhuo Qingxi and Hua Wushuang? That's right. Ask your brother. He knows everything." Hua Yu didn't believe it at first, but Hua Wuin's reaction was so strange that he stared at him. "Wuin." Hua Wuin jumped. All the spiritual overlords stared at Hua Wuin. The battle had gone on for no reason, and they were so frustrated that they wanted to know what had started it. Hua Wuin already had a guilty conscience. With so many spiritual overlords watching, he panicked. "Brother," Hua Yu glared at him. "What are you waiting for? Speak." But Hua Wuin still wouldn't say anything. Feng Wu said grumpily, "Gosh, why are you so stubborn? I sold your daughter that medicine myself. She can't ignore me after the scars on her face disappeared." Hua Wuin suddenly looked up and stared at Feng Wu with widened eyes. Chapter 36:14, The Third Eye 4. "Wu Ji's face is cured by you? It was you?" Only then did Hua Wuin realize how terrifying it was. Hua Yu stared at Hua Wuin. "What's going on? Tell me." Feng Wu didn't want to tell the truth, but in order to buy some time, she had to do it. Seeing what Hua Wuji had done, Feng Wu knew she was also a tough character. She couldn't let Mrs. Hua train her into a second Hua Wushuang. Feng Wu smiled at Hua Wuin. The others stared at him as well. Under such pressure, Hua Wuin couldn't take it anymore. He dropped to his knees and cried, "Brother!" He had no choice but to tell the truth. As it turned out, Hua Wushuang had ruined Hua Wuji's face and made her lose the chance to be raised by Mrs. Hua. Hua Wuji resented the Hua Wushuang for that. Now that her scar had been healed, she took her revenge on Hua Wushuang and planned the incident between Hua Wushuang and Zhuo Qingxi. Everyone stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. Hua Yu and Zhuo Ming were shaking from head to toe. They were so shocked that they didn't know what to say. All Feng Wu did was treat Hua Wuji's face with some ointment, and everything else went as planned. Hua Wuji had her own plan, so she went to see her parents. Hua Wuyin and his wife helped Hua Wuji out. Hua Wushuang and Zhua Qingxi were set up by Hua Wuji and her parents. Hua Wuyin, I can't believe it. How could you do such a thing? Hua Huayu stared at Hua Wuyin and slapped him. He had never expected this. Nor would Mrs. Hua Wuji was the one at fault. Little Phoenix admired Feng Wu as it dug. She was indeed as smart as she ever was. See? She had planned to drag Hua Wuji and her family down with her from the very beginning. And now, she was stalling to buy more time for the bird. How could she be so good at making good use of useless people? The Hua family quarreled and wasted a lot of time. Bukong was furious. By then, the bleeding had been stopped, and his head was clearing up. He kicked Hua Huayu in frustration. Are you out of your mind? Why are you still arguing with your family? With everything that has happened, what good will it do to find out who did it? The most important thing now is to kill Feng Wu. Bukong grew anxious as he went on. The whole thing started because Feng Wu cured your daughter's face. Why would she tell everyone about it? Wouldn't the Hua family and the Zhou family take their revenge if she told them? But why did she tell them now? She's just trying to annoy you. Are you killed by that information? If not, why would such a smart girl expose herself? There's only one reason. She's stalling you idiots. Since she's the one who has set up this formation, of course, she has a way to solve it, but I'm guessing it'll take time. Have you forgotten? Feng Wu is also guarded by spiritual overlords. Do we still have the strength to fight? If we run into other spiritual overlords, we'll die. If you still have strength, grab Feng Wu now. Don't kill her. Just take her hostage. Chapter 36:15 Hidden Master 1. Bukong said, "Take Feng Wu down. Don't let anyone get in." But it was too late when Bukong said that because there was a loud bang. The spiritual overlords couldn't break the wall before, but it collapsed at that moment. The walls of the Zhou family's courtyard began to crack. People charged in like shooting stars. They were Feng Sun Yuminji and the other elders. The first thing the elders did was to control the injured spiritual overlords. Feng Sun and Yuminji's first reaction was to run toward Feng Wu. They reached for Feng Wu. However, Feng Wu smiled bitterly before they could touch her. No! Feng Sun and Yuminji stopped abruptly and looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Feng Wu smiled bitterly. I'll break. What? They didn't understand it at first, but when they saw the blood oozing out of Feng Wu's mouth, they immediately saw light. Tears rolled down Yuminji's cheeks. Xiao Wu, I'm so sorry. By then, the elders had all 20-odd peak-level spiritual overlords under control, and General Gao was here to ask Feng Wu what to do next. Yuminji was filled with hatred. She's like this, and you're still asking her? She'll die. One touch could break her. How much pain did the girl have to be in? Yuminji wanted to cry again. Feng Wu looked at Feng Sun. Do you remember that bottle I told you to keep? Feng Sun nodded. Of course. Feng Wu coughed. Blood was still oozing out of the corner of her mouth, and Yuminji couldn't bring himself to see her like this. He wiped the blood off her mouth right away. Feng Wu said, in that porcelain bottle is the intelligence reduction pill. Feng Sun was confused. What intelligence reduction pill? Meanwhile, Hua Huayu was staring at Feng Wu. The intelligence reduction pill. You have it? I remember that the recipe is with the Hua family. How can you have it? You'd had Feng Wu cleared out the treasure rooms. Feng Wu glanced at Hua Huayu. I bought it from someone. As for who I bought it from? Feng Wu smiled. Do you think I'm going to tell you? Feng Wu went on talking to Feng Sun. Feed each of them a concentration intelligence reduction pill. Make sure they digest the pill and won't vomit it out. Be careful. These spiritual overlords may have been struck by lightning, but some of them are definitely faking it. Don't let anyone hurt you, Feng Wu nagged. Feng Sun felt even more sorry for her. You're so badly injured. Please don't say anything. I understand what you mean. After that, Feng Sun distributed the pills. The dozen or so spiritual overlords he brought with him all started feeding their opponents. It wasn't Zhuo Ming's turn yet, and he was filled with questions. What exactly is this intelligence reduction pill? Because Hua Huayu looked like he was going to lose his mind. The others didn't know either and were all looking at the master of the Hua family in bewilderment, although they knew instinctively that the pill wouldn't be good news for them. Hua Huayu said, "It's the intelligence reduction pill. You can tell from the name. If you eat it, your mind will go blank, and you'll be controlled by other people. You'll become their tool." "Don't eat it! Don't eat it!" Hua Huayu shouted. Chapter 36:16 Hidden Master 2. This intelligence reduction pill is ineffective against people of other stages, but it's very effective against spiritual overlords. After eating it, the person who refined it will become your master. You'll do whatever they tell you to do. Hua Huayu stared at Bukong. At this moment, General Gao was feeding Bukong the intelligence reduction pill. When Bukong heard this, he struggled desperately. However, after the lightning tribulation, Bukong's strength had been severely damaged, and Feng Wu's lightning eye injured his right eye. He was at the end of his rope. General Gao was at the peak of the spiritual overlord stage, so he grabbed Bukong like he was holding a chick and forcefully stuffed the intelligence reduction pill into his mouth. General Gao grabbed Bukong by the throat. After the intelligence reduction pill was stuffed in, he quickly tapped the acupoints around Bukong's esophagus, and the pill slid all the way into his dantian. General Gao placed his palm on Bukong's abdomen and injected hot spiritual essence into Bukong. In an instant, the pill melted and flowed into Bukong's system. Only then did General Gao let go of Bukong. He used to be a high and mighty peak-level spiritual overlord, but he was lying on the ground like an old dog at this moment. He kept retching and tried to forcefully vomit out the intelligence reduction pill, but it was useless. The gathering intelligence reduction pill had already turned into a warm current and fused with his bones and blood. Unless he bled into his body and shattered his bones, there was no way to get it out. The intelligence reduction pill would shatter a certain part in the brain, making people forget about everything except for their cultivation. They would fight to the death. Hua Huayu stared at Feng Wu. He knew that the intelligence reduction pill was a pill used by the royal family in the previous dynasty to raise sacrificial soldiers. However, it was lost, and the Hua family found it by accident, but they hadn't been able to make it. To his surprise, Feng Wu had refined it. "You only obtained the formula in the past few days because I saw this formula 3 days ago. It was in my family's treasure vault." The old man stared at Feng Wu with a cold look in his eyes. "Am I right to conclude that you made so many intelligence reduction pills in 3 days?" Feng Wu neither admitted nor denied it. Hua Huayu said, "You obviously came prepared. You were the one who came up with the intelligence reduction pills, the formation on the wall, and the lightning tribulation. Feng Wu, you planned this massacre." As soon as Hua Huayu said this, the entire place fell silent. They had suspected so, but they didn't dare to admit it. Because if they admitted that they couldn't beat a weak girl like Feng Wu even if they worked together, they would think that they were retarded. But now, the truth was right in front of them. Feng Wu smiled at Hua Huayu. Hua Huayu suddenly began to laugh and cry at the same time. "I've spent my entire life boasting of being smart and scheming. I didn't expect that you, a teenage girl, would make me suffer a crushing defeat. You're so..." Before Hua Huayu could finish speaking, he was so angry that a mouthful of blood rushed out of his mouth. The lightning tribulation nearly killed him, and his brother had disappointed him greatly. Now that Feng Wu had revealed the truth, he was on the verge of a mental breakdown. Hua Huayu kept vomiting blood until he dropped dead. Chapter 36:17 Hidden Master 3. Hua Huayu would rather die than be controlled as a killing machine. Bukong glared at Feng Wu, his eyes flashing with fury. Feng Wu said calmly, "Don't worry. I won't force you to do anything for my personal gain. I won't humiliate the dignity of a spiritual overlord. So, even if you die, you'll die a noble death." Gritting his teeth, the black and white priest stared at Feng Wu. "What are you going to do to us?" Feng Wu said calmly, "On the peace grassland, the spiritual overlords of Junwu and Dongsang are fighting to the death." Feng Wu stopped there, but many people didn't understand what she meant. The black and white priest said, "You want to send us to the battlefield?" Feng Wu nodded. "As I said, I'll make sure you die an honorable death." Everyone fell silent. The winner takes all. They had expected that Feng Wu would let them go, but to die like this. "What if I don't agree?" The black and white priest stared at Feng Wu. "I'm begging you to let me pay a ransom for my life." The other spiritual overlords nodded along. Feng Wu smirked. "You people? The Zhou family has colluded with the Dongsang kingdom, and the Hua family and Firmament Palace are best friends. And there are the itinerant cultivators, who have no intention of protecting the country. It's impossible for you to protect your country, so I'll give you a chance. Isn't it good to let you live a great life and die gloriously?" Oh no. The stronger these spiritual overlords were, the more selfish they became. They only wanted to live for themselves and didn't want to do anything for their empire. "Give them the pills," Feng Wu reminded General Gao. Hence, the second batch of intelligence reduction pills was distributed. Those spiritual overlords kept struggling, but they couldn't do anything. Feng Wu sighed inwardly. Why did these people have to mess with her? Didn't they know how fierce she could be? Just then, Feng Wu noticed a wary look in the eyes of one of the elders Yu Minji had brought with him. "Where?" Feng Wu smiled and said to the spiritual overlords on her side, "I'll never use the intelligence reduction pill on my own people. However, if you want to kill me, don't let me get the chance. Otherwise, I'll stuff the pills into your mouth." Feng Wu had heard of the formula for the intelligence reduction pill, but she had never gotten her hands on it. That was why she had gone to the palace to look for Emperor Wu, and the two of them had talked for a long time in the imperial study. Emperor Wu had told her that the formula was with the Hua family. That was why Feng Wu had set her sights on Hua Wushuang. She pretended to be Hua Wushuang and stole the intelligence reduction pill's formula from the treasure hall. With Emperor Wu's support, she didn't have to worry about the ingredients. After her seclusion, Feng Wu soon made a bunch of pills. That was one of Feng Wu's trump cards, and she had never told anyone about it. The elder beside Yu Minji was relieved to hear that. He had been worried that Feng Wu would use the intelligence reduction pill on them if the Junwu Empire and the Dark Dynasty became enemies one day. More than 20 spiritual overlords were forcefully fed the intelligence reduction pills. The pill was gradually taking effect, slowly corroding their brains and nerves. The fear and pain of being controlled filled their minds, making them wish they were dead. At the same time, they regretted what they had done. Why did they have to go against Feng Wu? Chapter 36:18, Hidden Expert 4. Why did they come here to kill Feng Wu? Why was this mission so difficult? Why wasn't Feng Wu dead? At this moment, the sky was suddenly torn apart. Two figures rushed over like lightning. Oh no! Feng Wu's paled a little. The person in the sky struck out before she reached Feng Wu. Like a shooting star, the energy streaked across the sky toward Feng Wu's face. A spiritual saint wanted to take the life of a spiritual overlord. Mrs. Hua was going to kill Feng Wu. The spiritual essence was rampaging. The rolling clouds were torn to pieces. Space distorted violently because of this majestic shock wave. The spiritual essence surged with killing intent. Die! Mrs. Hua roared. Watch out! Seeing that, Yu Minji rushed up to Feng Wu and shielded her. Holding Feng Wu in his arms, Feng Sun used his back as a second barrier. Young master! Knowing that they wouldn't be able to withstand the attack, Yu Minji's three elders stood in front of Yu Minji and shielded him with their own bodies. Prince! The elders of the northern Feng manor did the same. General Gao and General Yuan stood in front of Feng Wu as well. One after another, the men used their bodies as a shield to protect Feng Wu. Mrs. Hua's face was hideous and distorted. Her power wreaked havoc like a storm and seemed like it could destroy the world. Just then, the spirit saint sent by Emperor Wu suddenly raised his sword and blocked Mrs. Hua's path. The people below were instantly overjoyed. A spirit saint had been hiding behind Feng Wu, protecting her. Who was this person? That's an expert sent by the Imperial Palace, one of Yu Minji's elders whispered. It turned out that Emperor Wu had already sent a top expert to protect Feng Wu. To everyone else, it seemed that Emperor Wu and Feng Wu were working together this time, with Emperor Wu operating behind the scene to take out the Zhou family and the Hua family all at once. Seeing this, Zhou Ming thought he understood everything. He was in despair. He hadn't expected Emperor Wu to be involved. Emperor Wu wanted the Zhou family dead. Although the Zhou family was connected to the Dongsang kingdom, it was for self-preservation. How could Emperor Wu destroy the Zhou family? Right now, Zhou Ming hated Emperor Wu to the core. The itinerant cultivators were all extremely depressed. It was obvious that Emperor Wu wanted to eradicate the Hua family and the Zhou family. How could they be so stupid as to get involved in such a fight? No wonder Feng Wu was so confident. It turned out that she was just Emperor Wu's bait. In reality, this girl wasn't as smart as they thought. That's true. If she really turned the tables and killed more than 40 of our spiritual overlords at such a young age, she would really be incredible. Bukong and the others found an excuse to convince themselves that they weren't stupid. However, what they didn't know was that Feng Wu was the one controlling the situation, and Emperor Wu had only sent a few powerful cultivators to protect Feng Wu at this critical moment. We won't be able to win against Emperor Wu's spiritual saint. Bukong gritted his teeth. Black and White Priest said, unless Sua Qingfeng comes to our aid now. I wonder if Mrs. Hua has killed him. Chapter 3619, Jun Linyuan, 1. At this critical moment, Zhou Qingfeng descended from the sky. OMG! Everyone present was shocked. Some were hadi-divi, while others were sad. Everyone on Feng Wu's side was shocked, and the Hua family of the Zhou family was overjoyed. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. The spirit saint had blocked Mrs. Hua's attack, but he couldn't stop Zhou Qingfeng in time. The people closest to him were the spiritual overlords sent by Emperor Wu. Behind them were Yu Minji's elders. After that were the elders of the northern Feng mansion. General Gao and General Yuan were behind them. Finally, there were Yu Minji and Feng Sun. The first to be sent flying was the spiritual overlord sent by Emperor Wu. The fist seemed to contain endless power, and everyone was sent flying to the sides. The spiritual overlords sent by Emperor Wu were the first ones taking the hit. They were seriously injured and fell to the ground. Then there were the 3 elders of Yu Minji, who were also blown away by Zhou Qingfeng's punch. They had already tried their best to block Zhou Qingfeng's attack but had failed. The difference between the spiritual overlord stage and the spirit saint stage was like the difference between heaven and earth. The spiritual overlords that were blown away were as fragile as glass in front of Zhou Qingfeng. Their defense was negligible to Zhou Qingfeng. The force of the punch didn't stop because of their obstruction. It continued to charge forward with incomparable ferocity. The elders of Northern Feng Mansion were also sent flying. General Gao and General Yuan couldn't hold their ground either. Yu Minji and Feng Sun were also sent flying. The power of that punch was like a volcanic eruption. It was unstoppable. Killing intent soared to the sky. Energy ran wild. Zhou Qingfeng's fist was about to reach Feng Wu. Xiao Wu! Feng Sun cried out in shock. He knew that Feng Wu had suffered serious internal injuries. The energy of the punch only brushed past them, and they were almost torn to pieces. Xiao Wu was already so badly injured. What should she do? Zhou Ming was ecstatic. Finally, his father was here. We're safe. Zhou Ming had been forced to swallow the intelligence reduction pill, and now that he knew that Emperor Wu was going to destroy the Zhou family, he was overwhelmed. When he saw his father return, he was indescribably excited. The other spiritual overlords were also overjoyed. The pill had yet to take its full effect. They thought they still had a chance. The Dugu family. Dugu Ling looked at his father. Father, do you think Feng Wu will die? Seeing Zhou Chengfeng throw a punch at Feng Wu, Dugu Ling was curious. It was just that Feng Wu was such a lucky girl. It seemed that no one could kill her, and her attackers always died so easily. Old Master Dugu stroked his beard and smiled. If she doesn't die this time, it means that she's the chosen one. Our family won't dare to go against fate. Don't worry, she'll definitely die. How could Zhou Chengfeng, a spirit saint, not be able to deal with a little girl? Dugu Ju didn't think that would happen. However, in the next moment, soaring sword energy attacked like an angry dragon. Stop! The voice that came with the sword was like a thunderclap. A streak of sword energy flew over from the distant eastern horizon at lightning speed. It didn't collide with the fist. Instead, it wrapped around the fist energy and turned it into a ball before kicking it in the direction where the punch came from. That was where Zhou Chengfeng was. It could create a violent explosion. The ball moved unbelievably fast. Spiritual energy whizzed. Chapter 36-20, Jun Linyuan, 2. The air seemed to contort. Boom. The most violent fist energy smashed towards Zhou Chengfeng, and the old master of the Zhou family couldn't dodge it in time. His chest was hit, and the ball of power sank deep into his chest. Only then did the tall figure slowly land in front of Feng Wu. The teenager was nimble, handsome, and had twinkling eyes. He turned to look at Feng Wu with a frown and looked concerned. In the end, he only said, "I went to the Firmament Palace." It was as if those words could explain why he hadn't been around for a while. Feng Wu took the hint right away. For a moment, she felt conflicted. With Jun Linyuan here, the battle was practically over. The teenager stared at Zhou Chengfeng with a cold look in his eyes. With a wave of his hand, he drew out Sky Destroyer. There was only one Sky Destroyer, but it was as if 10,000 swole shooting out at the same time. The sword energy was so powerful that it could make rivers roar, mountains collapse, and the ground crack. The sky seemed to change color. Everyone was astonished. The Dugu family. Dugu Ling asked, "Father, are we still going to fight Feng Wu?" Dugu Ju was speechless. So was everyone else. Zhou Ming had only just had a little hope, but it was extinguished before he could enjoy the moment. Jun Linyuan. Why is he here? Why is Jun Linyuan here? Why? Zhou Ming scratched his head. Bukong frowned. Why would Jun Linyuan help Feng Wu? Zhou Ming gave Bukong a "you idiot" look. You don't know. Bukong asked, "What don't I know?" Zhou Ming said, "I hate to admit it, but Jun Linyuan is in love with Feng Wu. I'm sure you know that." Bukong was astonished. Shit. How am I supposed to know that? I'm only a spiritual overlord, and I don't know about such petty gossip. I would never have come here if I knew that Jun Linyuan was in love with Feng Wu. Jun Linyuan is so... Forget it. The black and white priest took a deep breath. Is Jun Linyuan really in love with Feng Wu? Zhou Ming nodded repeatedly. He really does. The black and white priests fell silent. Bukong glanced at the black and white priests and said, "A few years ago, we couldn't even withstand a single strike from Jun Linyuan. But now, we're bold enough to try to kill his woman? We must have a death wish." The black and white priest didn't know what to say. Zhou Ming asked, "Have you been beaten up by Jun Linyuan?" Bukong smirked. "You sound as if you've never been beaten up by him before." Zhou Ming said, "I really haven't." As soon as he said that, Bukong smirked. Isn't the Zhou family planning to destroy the Feng clan? Now that Jun Linyuan is here, you'll get your ass kicked. Well, Jun Linyuan doesn't beat people up. He only kills them. Master's heart sank. At the same time, Feng Sun and Yuminji were so excited that they almost burst into tears. Jun Linyuan is finally here. If he hadn't come, Xiaowu would have been dead by now. Yuminji was genuinely frightened this time, and tears rolled down his cheeks. Feng Sun was equally shaken. Although I had a feeling that Boss Jun would be here in time, he was almost late. We're so lucky. Chapter 3621, Jun Linyuan, 3. Wait! With a wave of Jun Linyuan's hand, spiritual essence fluctuated violently, and he charged at Zhuo Feng. Yu Minji turned around and glared at Feng Sun. Is Jun Linyuan hitting Zhuo Feng? Feng Sun looked at him in bewilderment. What's so strange about that? Yu Minji said, but Zhuo Feng is a spiritual saint, isn't he? Feng Sun said, that's right. Yu Minji said, but Jun Linyuan is hitting Zhuo Feng. Feng Sun asked, what's wrong with that? Yu Minji said, what's wrong with that? It's such a big deal. Tell me, what level is Jun Linyuan now? Feng Sun said, a spiritual saint, of course. Yu Minji said, I don't want to hear it. Stop talking. Feng Sun found the Yu Minji idiotic. He knew why Yu Minji had such a big reaction, for the little idiot had been comparing himself to Jun Linyuan, thinking that he was second only to Jun Linyuan. As it turned out, Jun Linyuan had just become a spiritual saint, while Yu Minji, he was only a junior spiritual overlord. Feng Sun felt sorry for Yu Minji. Of all the people you can think of, you have to compare yourself to Boss Jun. Don't you know that he's not like the rest of us? Don't you know that he's the chosen one? He's already a spiritual saint. Yu Minji said, stop it. Stop it. Rubbing his nose, Feng Sun found Yu Minji rather adorable at times. He then turned to look at his invincible boss Jun. Right now, Jun Linyuan was right in front of Zhuo Feng. With a cold look in his eyes, the teenager grabbed Zhuo Feng with his left hand. He clenched his right fist. He didn't give Zhuo Feng any chance to fight back. He picked up the old spiritual saint, who had been showing off his power for years, and punched him as if he was picking up a chicken. He punched Zhuo Feng in the stomach. All eyes were on Jun Linyuan's right hand. The hand seemed to have enough power to destroy heaven and earth. The spiritual essence in the air seemed to distort and shatter with each punch. Heaven and earth seemed to be shaken by his punch. The teenager was too powerful. There was no expression on his face, and the look in his eyes was as sharp as a sword. His eyes were so intimidating that the other people's legs were trembling, and they wanted to kneel down at his feet. Old Master Dugu suddenly rose to his feet and stared at the scene with bloodshot eyes. Zhuo Feng was about the same level as Old Master Dugu, and Jun Linyuan had beaten Zhuo Feng up like beating up a chicken. Naturally, he could do the same to Duguju. Old Master Dugu looked at Zhuo Feng as if he was looking at himself. Just then, Jun Linyuan turned his sharp gaze on Duguju. Dugu Ling felt as if he had been stabbed between the eyebrows. The water pattern exploded. Father! Seeing his father stumble, Dugu Ling reached out to steady him. Duguju spat out a mouthful of blood when Dugu Ling steadied him. Father! Master Dugu was exasperated. Duguju waved his hand, indicating that he was all right. However, his back was hunched and he looked 10 years older. What a capable teenager! Duguju wiped the corner of his mouth and looked like he was crying. To Dugu Ling, his father looked so miserable. Chapter 3622, Jun Linyuan, 4. Duguju knew that Jun Linyuan had realized that he was watching through the water image, and that stare was a warning. Of course, he wouldn't look at Jun Linyuan again, but when he thought about Jun Linyuan's capability, he felt so helpless. One could say that Jun Linyuan had grown up under Duguju's watch. More than a decade ago, he could easily break that boy's neck. Now, that boy was capable enough to shake heaven and earth. How many people in the Junwo Empire are his match now? What about in the future? Duguju asked in despair. Father, is Jun Linyuan that terrifying? What about the second prince? The Dugu family was where the second prince's mother came from, and they had always supported him. The second prince was so confident because he had the support of his grandfather, who was a spiritual saint. Duguju was filled with despair. Recalling how relentless Jun Linyuan had been and how he had punched Zhuo Feng repeatedly, he closed his eyes and told Dugu Ling, "Tell your sister to give up on the throne." Dugu Ling shouted in astonishment, "Father!" Duguju didn't want to explain further. In a battle between spiritual saints, Jun Linyuan alone was more than enough to take on several spiritual saints like himself. Duguju couldn't understand it. When Jun Linyuan fought Zhuo Qingfeng last time, Zhuo Qingfeng was at a disadvantage, but there wasn't much difference in their cultivation levels. Because Zhuo Qingfeng had severely injured Jun Linyuan as well. But it was different this time. Zhuo Qingfeng couldn't fight back at all. He couldn't even withstand Jun Linyuan's first strike. That was incredible. Duguju was furious and desperate. At the scene that the people there felt the same way as Duguju did. Jun Linyuan's fist was glinting and crackling with electric arcs. He was unbelievably powerful. Zhuo Qingfeng couldn't take it anymore and spat out a mouthful of blood. "Let go of my father!" Zhuo Ming shouted. The spiritual overlords of the Zhuo family, the Hua family, and the itinerant cultivators all looked at Jun Linyuan as if he was a friend. Jun Linyuan didn't seem to hear anything. The thought of Zhuo Qingfeng trying to kill Feng Wu made him want to kill the old man. Thump. In the end, Jun Linyuan punched Zhuo Qingfeng in the head. The old master of the Zhuo family, who had been tough all his life, shuddered violently and passed out. Jun Linyuan let go, and Zhuo Qingfeng fell from the sky. There was a loud bang and the impact created a big pit in the ground. Meanwhile, Jun Linyuan was charging toward Mrs. Hua. The mysterious spiritual saint from the imperial palace had always been protecting Emperor Wu. This time, Emperor Wu had asked him to protect Feng Wu, but Emperor Wu risked his own life. If someone saw through that plan and tried to assassinate Emperor Wu now. The mysterious spiritual saint nodded at Jun Linyuan and disappeared. Mrs. Hua narrowed her eyes when she saw Jun Linyuan. Naturally, she had seen how Jun Linyuan dealt with Zhuo Qingfeng. She immediately said, "Jun Linyuan, your grandmother has spoken. You're the future grandson-in-law of the Hua family. Our families." However, Mrs. Hua's opening line, which was supposed to be a way to show her connection with the Empress Dowager, completely infuriated Jun Linyuan. With a cold look in his eyes, the teenager struck down at Mrs. Hua with his sky destroyer. The sky destroyer shone with a mesmerizing blood-red light. Chapter 36-23, His Royal Highness 1. The sky destroyer created a river of blood and struck down at Mrs. Hua. Mrs. Hua stared at Jun Linyuan. "Jun Linyuan, how dare you?" Mrs. Hua was very close to the Empress Dowager and thought that Jun Linyuan wouldn't dare to touch her. However, she didn't expect Jun Linyuan to be so merciless. A streak of blood-red light swept across the air and reached Mrs. Hua in no time. The blade was aimed at her heart. Blood gushed out of Mrs. Hua's chest like fireworks. "Mother! With Hua you dead," Hua Wuyin wailed. "Grandma!" Hua Wushuang, who had been confused, woke up as well. Her mouth fell open. That was her grandmother, the pillar of the Hua family. She was a spiritual saint, but she had been stabbed without being able to fight back. And they weren't the only ones that were astonished. Even Mrs. Hua herself didn't have time to react. Looking down at the sky destroyer that had pierced her chest and was pulled out, she was dumbfounded when she saw the blood. "You're not 20 yet." He was so young, but his capability was so terrifying. Jun Linyuan stood in midair, and the sky destroyer seemed to have the power to destroy heaven and earth. He stared at the pillar of the empire as if he was looking at a dead person. "You shouldn't have picked on her." The crown prince was as taciturn as ever. He stared at the old lady, who was a spiritual saint, and the look in his eyes gave one the creeps. Mrs. Hua looked from her wound to Jun Linyuan and smiled in despair. "So, are you really going to kill me because of that girl?" The crown prince looked at the spiritual saint and asked, "Who are you again?" Mrs. Hua was surprised, but she seemed to realize something and burst into laughter. As she guffawed, blood gushed out. Yu Minji was confused. He nudged Feng Sun with his elbow. "Hey, what's that supposed to mean? Why is that old lady so mad?" The others pricked up their ears as well because they didn't understand it either. Feng Sun snapped, "What's there to be confused about? What Boss June means is that the old lady is nothing to him. Of course, he's going to kill her for Feng Wu. Feng Wu is his girl. Who the hell does the old lady think she is? The Empress Dowager's childhood friend? Ha. I'm sorry, but even his best friends don't dare to pick on Feng Wu. Why did the Empress Dowager's friend think she could?" Yu Minji looked at Feng Sun in resignation. "You're humiliating the Hua family. You know that?" Feng Sun looked over his shoulder and saw that everyone was indeed listening, especially the Hua family. They were infuriated by his explanation. Anyway, Hua Wuyin was already vomiting blood. Feng Sun shrugged. "That's what I meant. Otherwise, why was Mrs. Hua so angry? Well, that's the way it is. If she wants to take advantage of her seniority, she has to have some dignity first. She wanted to kill Xiao Wu, but she's also asking Boss June to respect her. How shameless." The Hua family was furious. However, right now, the Hua family was defenseless. They could only listen to Feng Sun, but couldn't fight back. "What are you talking about? I'm the Crown Prince's fiancé. Feng Wu is nothing. Don't be ridiculous." Chapter 36-24, His Royal Highness II. Hua Wushuang snapped back to her senses and scolded Feng Sun. Feng Sun, Yu Minji, and the others all looked at Hua Wushuang strangely. Was there something wrong with this woman's head? Hua Wushuang could only remember the last time she fought Feng Wu. Since then she had been defeated and locked up. Later, Feng Wu confused her memory, so she didn't know what happened after that. Seeing that Jun Linyuan wanted to kill her grandmother, Hua Wushuang jumped to her feet and waved at him. "Jun Linyuan, you can't kill my grandmother." However, the Crown Prince ignored her. The Sky Destroyer's energy was awe-inspiring, and its killing intense sword. Mrs. Hua was powerless to defend herself and was stabbed in the chest again. More blood spurted out. Hua Wushuang flushed and yelled at Jun Linyuan, "Jun Linyuan, you can't do that. That's my grandmother. She'll be your grandmother in the future. How can you be so disrespectful?" However, apart from attracting the strange looks of everyone, her pleading was useless. Wushuang, Hua Wuyin wanted to remind Hua Wushuang not to embarrass herself again. The Crown Prince really liked Feng Wu, and she had always been the one he liked. Hua Wuyin didn't expect that he would really say this aloud in a moment of desperation. Hua Wushuang stared at her uncle. "No matter what, the Crown Prince is already my fiancé. How can he do that to the Hua family? Even if he likes Feng Wu, he can just take her as his concubine. I'm the real wife." Feng Wu looked at Hua Wushuang as if she was retarded. She had indeed given Hua Wushuang hallucinogens, but she didn't mess with Hua Wushuang's intelligence. Why did she sound like an idiot? Mrs. Hua heard Hua Wushuang crying, so she was sure that Jun Linyuan heard it too. Mrs. Hua looked at Jun Linyuan. "Did you hear that?" The Crown Prince frowned and ignored Mrs. Hua's words. Despair filled Mrs. Hua's heart. "Can't you hear the cry of a girl who loves you to the bone? Jun Linyuan, you're so cruel." Frowning, Jun Linyuan looked at Mrs. Hua in confusion. "Who are you talking about?" Mrs. Hua's chest tightened. "Wushuang, your fiancé." The Crown Prince frowned. "The Empress Dowager said so." Mrs. Hua almost fainted. When the two of them were fighting, they didn't lower their voices, so everyone below could hear them. Mrs. Hua gritted her teeth. "You should honor your grandmother's decision regarding your marriage." As a matter of fact, the Empress Dowager was interrupted before she could make the announcement. Right now, Mrs. Hua was just trying to trick Jun Linyuan. Seeing the frown on Jun Linyuan's face, Mrs. Hua was relieved. Jun Linyuan really had no idea. Mrs. Hua said, "You can kill me, but I only want one thing from you. Treat Wushuang well. She's innocent. Let her bear your children and live safely." Those were her last words. She made herself look rather noble. For the future of the Hua clan, she was willing to die. However, the crown prince stared at Mrs. Hua coldly. Don't you know? Mrs. Hua looked at Jun Linyuan in confusion. The crown prince said, if the Empress Dowager's promise is worth anything, there are at least 100 wives in my residence now. Chapter 36-25. His Royal Highness, 3. What did he mean by that? Staring at Jun Linyuan, Mrs. Hua had a bad feeling. Jun Linyuan said calmly, I don't know if the Empress Dowager made a promise, but even if she did, why would you believe her? Mrs. Hua asked, why? Jun Linyuan said, if her promise is worth anything, I'll have hundreds of wives by now. Didn't the Empress Dowager tell you that? Mrs. Hua was speechless. Jun Linyuan frowned. The Empress Dowager didn't even tell you that. How close can you be? Mrs. Hua was shocked. Jun Linyuan smirked. That's what you get for using the Empress Dowager to intimidate me. As he said that, Jun Linyuan slashed at Mrs. Hua's neck with the Sky Destroyer. For a moment, a blood mist that was as dazzling as fireworks splattered in the sky. Mrs. Hua's eyes widened, and she glared at Jun Linyuan. Meanwhile, her head was completely separated from her body. Thump. Mrs. Hua's body fell to the ground first. Then there was another bang. Her head fell to the ground and bounced over Zhuo Qingfeng's feet. Zhuo Qingfeng stared at Jun Linyuan in disbelief. He actually did it. Jun Linyuan sheathed his sword and flew through the air. When everyone looked up, he had already landed in front of Feng Wu. The young man was surrounded by terrifying ripples of energy that emitted destructive pressure. Grandma! Hua Wushuang almost fainted when she saw the decapitated Mrs. Hua. She rushed over and held Mrs. Hua's headless body. Grandmother! Grandmother! She was really going to break down. What the hell is going on? What happened? Why did they fight? What's all this about? Hua Wushuang was on the verge of losing her mind. She looked at Jun Linyuan in despair. The Empress Dowager is going to make us husband and wife. Isn't the Hua family part of the royal family now? Why did you kill my grandmother? I'm your fiancé. How could you do this to me? Jun Linyuan, how could you? However, Jun Linyuan acted as if she wasn't there. He didn't even flinch as he stared at Feng Sun. Feng Sun said in a hurry, Boss Jun, don't listen to Hua Wushuang. Well, fiancé, there's no such thing. The Empress Dowager never announced anything like that. Hua Wushuang's face paled. The Empress Dowager indeed hadn't announced anything, but look at the dragon and phoenix jade bracelet. The Empress Dowager gave it to me. She said that it represented the crown prince's consort. I already, however, before she could finish, Jun Linyuan's eyes widened. The dragon and phoenix jade bracelet on Hua Wushuang's fair wrist shattered with a crack, and it turned into a powder that scattered onto the ground. Ah! Hua Wushuang screamed, My bracelet! My bracelet! However, she only had a handful of powder in her hand left. The bracelet was, Your Royal Highness, Hua Wushuang was desperate. Ever since her grandmother proposed to marry her off to the crown prince, she had been dreaming about it. She had dreamed about the son of her and Jun Linyuan taking the throne. When she saw the crown prince, she was even more infatuated with him, but now she had finally woken up from that dream. Jun Linyuan showed the Empress Dowager no respect. He said straightforwardly, Since the Empress Dowager promised you that, you can ask her to find you a husband. There's only one person I'll ever marry. Under everyone's gaze, Jun Linyuan turned around and stared at Feng Wu. Chapter 36-26. His Royal Highness, 4. No one here was a fool. Not only that, but they were also the smartest people in the empire. Otherwise, they wouldn't have cultivated the spiritual overlord stage. They followed Jun Linyuan's gaze and looked at Feng Wu. All of a sudden, they understood everything. Feng Wu felt uncomfortable under Jun Linyuan's gaze. What was that supposed to mean? Why was Jun Linyuan staring at her? It was as if she was his. Jun Linyuan stared at the red-dressed girl's flushed face, and only then did he turn to look at Hua Wushuang. You're not even fit to carry my shoes, and you want to be my wife? Are all people of the Hua family so delusional? No matter how much Hua Wushuang lied to herself, she had to face reality now. She looked at Jun Linyuan in despair. Your Royal Highness, have you never cared about me? Jun Linyuan gave her a strange look as if he couldn't understand why she would ask such a question. Hua Wushuang was extremely embarrassed. If she couldn't win his heart, what about Zhuo Qingluan? Your Royal Highness must have feelings for her. Hua Wushuang wanted to humiliate Feng Wu. However, the Crown Prince, who had always been a taciturn person, seemed to have figured something out after his return. He kept his eyes on Feng Wu as he answered Hua Wushuang. In the past, he wouldn't even bother to answer. He would just draw his sword. The teenager stared at Feng Wu with his bright eyes and asked calmly, Zhuo Qingluan? Who's that? Everyone was too familiar with these words. That was what the Crown Prince liked to ask when he didn't like someone. So what he meant was... Hua Wushuang shook her head in shock. That's impossible. Everyone says the Crown Prince is crazy about Sister Qingluan and loves her as much as his life. Many people turned to look at Jun Linyuan. That's right. They had all heard of it before. Hua Wushuang pointed at Jun Linyuan. Your Royal Highness, you're replacing your old love with new ones. You found a new lover and abandoned Sister Qingluan. Don't you think that's a disgrace to your reputation as the Crown Prince? And that bitch who seduced you, how dare she? Hua Wushuang's words infuriated Jun Linyuan. Feng Sun frowned as well. It was strange that Hua Wushuang wanted to die when she could live. As expected, in the next moment, Jun Linyuan was furious. He raised his finger slightly. The pressure made everything feel that they couldn't breathe. Staring at Hua Wushuang, Jun Linyuan gave her a cold look. He said, You've succeeded in pissing me off. Hua Wushuang panicked when she met Jun Linyuan's cold eyes. She regretted her carelessness, but it was too late. The next second, Jun Linyuan pulled out Feng Sun's sword and threw it at her. The blade sank into Hua Wushuang's chest. The Crown Prince said in an emotionless voice, No one is allowed to slander her. Who was he referring to? Zhuo Qingluan is nothing. Jun Linyuan said indifferently. So he definitely wasn't referring to Zhuo Qingluan. I didn't care about the stories you made up before, but from now on I'll kill anyone who does that again. Jun Linyuan turned around and stared at Feng Sun. Got it? Feng Sun nodded immediately. I'll keep that in mind. Jun Linyuan didn't say much, but it was obvious what he meant. Zhuo Ming was so embarrassed that he wanted to dig a hole and hide in it. Chapter 36-27, End of Battle, 1. Zhuo Ming was so embarrassed that he wanted to dig a hole and hide in it. Only the Zhuo family knew that the Crown Prince had been in love with Feng Wu the whole time. Zhuo Qingluan had to turn her unrequited love into a love story. The Crown Prince hadn't cared about the rumor before, but now, Hua Wushuang had forced him to clarify things. Zhuo Qingluan's reputation would be ruined. At that thought, Zhuo Ming's hatred for Hua Wushuang surged. Hearing this, the surrounding people were dumbfounded. So, was everything Zhuo Qingluan's wishful thinking? Had she spread the rumor herself? That was really... Hua Wushuang was also shocked. She really didn't expect that the sacred lady of the Firmament Palace would do such a thing. No one would question Jun Linyuan's words because he was too powerful to lie. The surroundings were silent and it was a little awkward. Ignoring Hua Wushuang, Jun Linyuan asked Feng Sun, What's going on with these people? Jun Linyuan was asking about the itinerant cultivators, the spiritual overlords. Feng Sun knew that Boss Jun was away on an errand and didn't know much about the current situation. He told Boss Jun about how the Zhuo family and the Hua family had joined forces to exterminate the Feng clan while he was away and how Feng Wu was wanted by the entire continent. The more Feng Sun said, the more intimidating Jun Linyuan became. Everyone was terrified. They had no intention of fighting back against someone as powerful as Jun Linyuan. It was hopeless. I thought it was only the Zhuo family and the Hua family. I didn't know there were so many of them. Jun Linyuan frowned. Feng Sun asked, then these people? They were all spiritual overlords. There weren't many itinerant cultivators in the spiritual overlord stage, to begin with. It was really rare for so many of them to gather here. Wukong's heart skipped a beat. He would rather be sent to the battlefield than be stared at by Jun Linyuan as if he was a dead man. The fear was worse than dying. Kill them all. Jun Linyuan waved his hand. Killing over 20 spiritual overlords? That was a big deal. Even Emperor Wu wouldn't be able to do something like that. At that moment, someone walked up to Jun Linyuan. Your Royal Highness. It was Qin Yen, the captain of Emperor Wii's personal guards. He greeted Jun Linyuan and told him about Emperor Wu's order. His Majesty said, these people will be brought to the peace grassland. Jun Linyuan stared at Commander Qin with a cold look in his eyes. Qin Yen didn't dare meet Jun Linyuan's eyes because there was a murderous look in those eyes. It probably wasn't directed at him. It should be for His Majesty. Qin Yen said, that's part of Miss Feng Wu's plan. She's already made arrangements for the spiritual overlords. Apart from one person, no one could change Jun Linyuan's decision. When Jun Linyuan turned to look at Feng Wu, there was no coldness in his eyes. Do you have any plans for them? When he looked at the girl in the red dress, there was a tender look in his eyes. No one could deny the fact that Jun Linyuan was in love with Feng Wu when they saw his expression. Everyone could tell what the crown prince was thinking. Unfortunately, it was too late for them to see that. Wukong pounded his chest and stomped his feet. I was tricked by Zhua Qingwan. If Zhua Qingwan hadn't been spreading false rumors to make them believe that Jun Linyuan liked her and not Feng Wu. If they had known that Jun Linyuan treated Feng Wu that way, how would they dare to come here? How would they dare to try to kill Feng Wu? Chapter 36-28, End of Battle, 2. Not only would they not dare to kill Feng Wu, but they would also worship her as their little master. Jun Linyuan's gaze was so intense that Feng Wu felt a little awkward. Yes, she replied. I've already made arrangements for them. Feed them the intelligence reduction pill and let them defend the Junwu Empire on the peace grassland. If they're lucky enough to survive, they can atone for their sins. Once the Dongsang kingdom is defeated, I'll give them the antidote and let their minds recover. Feng Wu's breathing was unsteady when she said that, and she was trembling a little. When Jun Linyuan wasn't around, Feng Wu had to hide her weakness because she couldn't afford to let it show. Otherwise, everything would go out of control. No one knew if the Dugu family's old master would participate. If he did, things would go south for her. Hence, Feng Wu tried her best not to show any pain on her face. But now that Jun Linyuan was here, Feng Wu couldn't take it anymore and fell to the side. Jun Linyuan reacted quickly and scooped Feng Wu up into his arms. She's hurt. Yu Minji rushed over and said to Jun Linyuan in a hurry. She's badly hurt. You'll make it worse. Let me carry her. However, Jun Linyuan didn't even glance at Yu Minji. Resting a hand on Feng Wu's back, he infused his spiritual essence into her body and checked her insides. Jun Linyuan's face turned livid. He had never been so angry before. Feng Wu could feel Jun Linyuan's murderous intent. Don't kill them. Help me. Feng Wu fell into Jun Linyuan's arms, feeling that all the tension and anxiety had been relieved. She didn't need to hang on even though she was in so much pain. It hurts. Her lips were dry and pale. Jun Linyuan turned around and stared at the people around him. All those people were under the crown prince's murderous gaze. He had the power to kill them all. He only needed to raise his hand, and his spiritual essence would erupt, turning everyone to dust. He really had the power to destroy the world. It hurts. Feng Wu tugged at Jun Linyuan's sleeve and looked at him pitifully. In the end, his anger was stopped by the look in her doe-like eyes. He took a deep breath and said, I'll spare you lot for the time being. Who was he referring to? Did he mean the Zhua family, the Hua family, and the other spiritual overlords? General Gao and General Yuan felt a little uneasy too. Jun Linyuan carried Feng Wu and soared into the sky, disappearing without a trace. They arrived at Jun Linyuan's residence, which was near the imperial city. He never went to his residence in the palace and only lived in the mansion outside. Granny Gong, prepare some hot water. Feng hurried in after Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan turned around and stared at Feng with a cold look in his eyes. Feng knew that Jun Linyuan was blaming him for not staying by Feng Wu's side. The Zhou family is working with the Dongsang Kingdom. Whenever the Zhou family makes a move, the Sun Castle will take action, the steward said in resignation. What happened this time was the same as last time. The steward added, Vaughn went to the Firmament Palace. If I hadn't gone to Nest, it would have been destroyed now. Chapter 36-29, End of Battle, 3. The look on Jun Linyuan's face was as grim as ever, and the pressure he exerted was terrifying. He refused to see Feng, so the steward had to rub his nose and wait outside. Granny Gong had finished preparing the hot water, and when she passed by the door, she saw the steward and couldn't help but glance at him. Feng shook his head. Jun Linyuan was still in a state of rage. It would be fine if Feng Wu could recover, but if she couldn't, Emperor Wu would be in trouble. Jun Linyuan put Feng Wu on the bed and examined her carefully. When they were at the Zhou family's house, Jun Linyuan had only done a cursory check. But now, he went from Feng Wu's hair to the last acupuncture point on the sole of her foot. After that, the teenager fell silent. She was like a ragged doll. The girl on the bed had her eyes closed and her face was pale. Even her breathing was so weak that it almost stopped. Once she relaxed, her heartbeat would be negligible. It would only beat once after a long time to maintain the most basic vital function. She was still alive, but her body was already in a rotten state. It was even worse than a 100-year-old man who had never cultivated. Granny Gong carefully wiped Feng Wu's body as if she were a porcelain doll. She didn't dare move too much, for fear that she would break the porcelain doll in her hand. Seeing the frown on Jun Linyuan's face and sensing his mood, Granny Gong knew that the situation was dire. Miss Wu, how is she? Granny Gong was very concerned. Jun Linyuan pursed his lips and looked anxious. He shook his head. It's much worse than I thought. Is it life-threatening? Granny Gong asked. Jun Linyuan didn't say anything. His face was grim. Should we call Master Chu over? Granny Gong asked. Jun Linyuan frowned. He's not good enough. Granny Gong said, then Master Linghu is our only option. Jun Linyuan shook his head. Master Linghu is in seclusion somewhere. I can't find him. Granny Gong was in despair. Staring at Granny Gong, Jun Linyuan said, no one is allowed to disturb me for the next 3 days. Don't knock on my door even if the empire is falling apart. Granny Gong was shocked. Was it that serious? Without another word, Granny Gong nodded and left in silence. After Granny Gong left, Jun Linyuan helped Feng Wu up and sat her down cross-legged on the bed, while he sat down opposite her. He raised Feng Wu's slender hand and slashed a dagger across it. Blood oozed out of her palm, and it smelled like burnt flesh. Jun Linyuan closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and finally calmed down. He cut Feng Wu's other hand as well. After that, he did the same to his palms. He pressed his palms against hers, and a ray of light passed from his hands to her body. At first, the light was thin because he was afraid that Feng Wu wouldn't be able to withstand it. But slowly, the lustrous light began to increase in number and speed. In the end, it stopped at a steady pace. If anyone outside saw this, if a spirit saint saw this scene, he would definitely go crazy. Only a spiritual saint could refine the spiritual saint liquid. It could repair the body and soul. A spirit saint wouldn't have too much of it. A junior one might have 1 or 2 drops, an intermediate one might have dozens of drops, and a senior one might have over 100 or maybe more, but there was a limit. The spiritual saint liquid was the life force of a spirit saint. Chapter 36-30, End of Battle, 4. The spiritual saint liquid was the life force of a spiritual saint. But now, Jun Linyuan was passing the spiritual saint liquid to Feng Wu, and he didn't hold back at all. The spiritual saint liquid kept flowing out and floating in the air. There were even wisps that floated out of the house and into the courtyard. Granny Gong was talking to the steward in a low voice when the latter's eyes widened. Granny Gong asked, "What's with that look on your face?" She was just asking if Miss Wu's life was in danger, but Feng actually glared at her. It was as if she was asking a retarded question. Staring at the spiritual saint liquid, Feng waved his hand, and the liquid reached his palm. The steward took a look at it, and his face was grim. "What did His Royal Highness tell you?" He stared at Granny Gong. Granny Gong said, "His Royal Highness said that no one should disturb in the next 3 days even if the empire is falling apart." Feng said, "He really is." Granny Gong looked at the steward in confusion. Feng opened his hand and gave Granny Gong the drop of spiritual saint liquid. He's given his own spiritual saint liquid to Feng Wu. A spiritual saint without the spiritual saint liquid means he'll have no replenishment in battle. If the enemy finds out, they'll set up a trap to kill him. Furthermore, the spiritual saint liquid contains his cultivation principle. By giving it to little Feng Wu, he's exposing his weakness to her. His life would be at her mercy. Granny Gong said, "Miss Xiao Wu is trustworthy." Feng said, "Of course I know she's trustworthy, but did you see that? I picked up a wisp of his spiritual saint liquid out here. What does that mean? Miss Feng Wu didn't absorb all of it and it leaked out. If anyone with ill intention picks up the spiritual saint liquid, it'll be very dangerous." As he spoke, Feng raised his hand to seal the room so that the spiritual saint liquid wouldn't leak out. Granny Gong said seriously, "I can tell that His Royal Highness has already decided that Miss Wu is the one. What he is doing is his promise. I hope Miss Wu can understand His Royal Highness's efforts." Feng's steward said, "But the spiritual saint liquid might not work." Granny Gong stared at the steward in surprise. Feng smiled bitterly. "Do you think I'm joking? No, I'm telling the truth. His Royal Highness is using desperate measures this time. Every spirit saint can indeed refine the spiritual saint liquid, but this spiritual saint liquid is used to repair their own bodies. It may not be as effective when used on other people. Besides, there's a huge gap between their cultivation levels. His Royal Highness's spirit saint liquid might not be very useful." Feng became more and more frustrated as he spoke. Granny Gong said, "That shows how much His Royal Highness is in love with Miss Wu." Feng rolled his eyes at her. "I thought you wouldn't like Miss Xiao Wu anymore." Granny Gong smiled bitterly. "Why wouldn't I? I watched His Royal Highness grow up. How could I not care about him? Now that I see how much he loves Miss Wu, I can't wait to help him. Why would I stop him?" Granny Gong sighed. "It's not easy for His Royal Highness to fall in love with someone. If he misses Miss Wu, he might be destined to be alone for the rest of his life. So, we have to do our best." Chapter 36-31. Injury 1. Although Granny Gong and Feng were very supportive of Feng Wu, her recovery was very slow. Over the past 3 days, Jun Linyuan had never let go of her. He kept sending her the spiritual saint liquid until he couldn't hold on any longer. When Jun Linyuan transferred the last drop of spiritual saint liquid he could condense into Feng Wu's body, he finally collapsed and laid Feng Wu down on the bed. After examining Feng Wu, Jun Linyuan didn't look any better. Feng Wu had woken up. She had been conscious for the past 3 days, but she couldn't make a sound. It was only now that she could speak again. Feng Wu couldn't help but laugh when she saw the pale-faced teenager sitting there. A few days ago, he had been so arrogant that he could destroy the world, but now he was as depressed as a little boy. She put her hand on his, and a smile appeared on her pale face. "Don't be depressed. You've already done a great job." Feng Wu struggled to speak because she still felt very weak. Jun Linyuan looked at her. His mood didn't improve because of her words. Instead, it worsened. He lay next to Feng Wu, and Feng Wu stroked his hair. "Once I become a divine medicine refiner, I'll be able to cure myself. So, don't worry, okay?" Feng Wu was still very optimistic. However, she had examined herself and realized how serious her situation was. This time, it was beyond expectations. She had made too many breakthroughs, and the heavenly lightning tribulation was too ferocious. However, if it wasn't fierce enough, it wouldn't have been able to suppress those spiritual overlords. Hence, Feng Wu had no choice but to try her best to make more breakthroughs and attract even stronger lightning tribulations. That was why she couldn't withstand the lightning tribulation anymore. The divine phoenix blood had already helped her absorb the lightning liquid. Without it, Feng Wu would have died on the spot. I cultivate the lightning technique. My body will recover slowly. Feng Wu stroked his hair and said calmly, "Don't worry about me." Jun Linyuan was even more frustrated. She had always been a lively and enchanting person. He had never seen her like this, lying there sickly and talking in such a calm voice. They both knew that Feng Wu's life was saved, but her internal organs were destroyed. In the future, she would be extremely weak, and she would pant with every step she took. Jun Linyuan couldn't stand it. He stood up and walked out. "Where are you going?" Feng Wu had a bad feeling. "I'll avenge you." The youth was furious. He was furious because he couldn't do anything else. Feng Wu Nagikalst come hack. However, the young man had already strode away and was nowhere to be seen. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. Was Jun Linyuan going to start a massacre this time? As soon as Jun Linyuan left, Feng Wu heard footsteps outside. Xiao Wi. It was Feng Sun and Yuminji. Yuminji was stopped outside, and only Feng Sun could make it in. "Xiao Wu, how are you doing?" Feng Sun was only able to get in because of Feng. "I'm fine." Feng Wu struggled to sit up on the bed and leaned against the cushion. She was exhausted. Feng Sun almost burst into tears. Why? This time, almost all the danger was directed at Feng Wu. She was deep inside her own trap, but the people protecting her were unharmed. The more Feng Sun thought about it, the more frustrated he became. "You're not fine at all." Chapter 36-32, Injury, 2. Tears welled up in Feng Sun's eyes. "You're not fine at all." Feng Wu smiled. "What's wrong with me? I'm fine." Feng Sun said, "No, you're not. I can't sense any spiritual essence from you. How can you be fine?" Feng Wu was rendered speechless. Frustrated, Feng Sun sat down next to her and asked in a hurry, "Have you lost your cultivation ability? I can't sense your spiritual essence." As he spoke, he checked her pulse, which made him even more anxious. Feng Wu said with a wry smile, "I haven't lost my spiritual essence, but I can't use it. I'm too weak." She pointed at her internal organs. The lightning liquid has washed them over and over again, and they're almost useless. They haven't recovered yet. Feng Sun asked in a hurry, "When will they recover?" Feng Wu said, "I don't know." "How could you not know? Aren't you a semi-divine medicine refiner? You don't even know? How can you not know?" Feng Wu comforted him. "Don't worry." Feng Sun became even more anxious. "Then when can you recover? I saw Boss Jun storm out just now. If you weren't so badly injured, why would he be so angry? You're the only one who can piss him off now." Hearing that, Feng Wu said in a hurry, "He said he's going to avenge me. Who can he get revenge on? Where are the people of the Hua family and the Zhou family? It's been 3 days. How could they still be here? They've already been sent to the Peace Grassland. My father is so happy that he's saying the best things about you." After a pause, Feng Sun said, "He doesn't know about your injury yet." She said, "Don't tell him yet. It's a critical moment in the war. In fact, Jun Linyuan should be on the battlefield right now, but I'm holding him back." Feng Sun stared at her. "What are you blaming yourself for? Do you know that you turned the tables by sending over 20 spiritual overlords?" Feng Wu asked, "So soon?" "It's been 3 days, so it won't be long now. We only had a limited number of spiritual overlords on the grassland because we were training our troops. We didn't really fight. This is a life and death battle now, so we won't limit the number of people. We'll just have to send as many spiritual overlords as we can. Feng Wu asked in a hurry, "What's the situation now?" Feng Sun said, "We're closing in, and the enemy is losing ground. We'll be able to take down the Sun Castle in a few days." She smiled. "That was good." Feng Sun said excitedly, "Father said that it's all thanks to the 20-odd fighters you sent over. They're really soldiers of sacrifice now. All they care about is killing people. They won't stop at anything. The people of Dongsang are so ruthless, but they're so scared now. By the way, my father told me to listen to you. He said that it was all thanks to your medicine. Did you give him anything?" Feng Sun asked curiously. Feng Wu nodded. "My godfather was injured when he fought with Xue Zhibei last time. I left him some medicine to help him recover and level up. Did he make a breakthrough? He was one level lower than Xue Zhibei and was always suppressed by him. Now that he's so excited, I think I know." Feng Sun nodded. "Nothing gets past you." Chapter 36-33, The Fiend, 1. Feng Wu came to her senses. If those spiritual overlords went to the Peace Grassland, I don't think Jun Linyuan will go after them. Then I think he went to his father, Feng Sun said grumpily. Feng Wu looked at him. "Why do you look so angry?" Feng Sun snorted. "I'm mad because I remembered something. You were talking about that plan with His Majesty in the Imperial study when I sent you to the palace. He was willing to put you at such a risk because you're not his own daughter. He wouldn't have agreed to it. You're only a spiritual king, and you were fighting over 40 spiritual overlords. How could he let you do such a thing? I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I was so scared that I'm having nightmares. When I asked you earlier, you kept telling me that you had a plan. Is that why you're bedridden now?" The more Feng Sun spoke, the angrier he became. He felt so sorry for the girl. Feng Wu smiled bitterly. "It's not like that." Feng Sun said angrily, "It's just not right. His Majesty has everything but your Iy1ing near Anna can't move. Does your Ramui nor near S. Alayakulf where's your mother?" Feng Wu said, "Don't tell Xiaoqi. I don't want him to come here." Feng Sun snorted. Feng Wu said quietly, "There has to be a way. There has to be." In the palace. Feng Wu and Feng Sun were right. Jun Linyuan had gone to Emperor Wu. The Emperor's study. Emperor Wu frowned. By then Jun Linyuan had smashed his study. All the maids and eunuchs were kneeling on the ground, and the Empress, the second prince, and the third princess didn't dare to come in. The imperial study. Who else would dare to destroy that study? That would be seen as a revolt. And Jun Linyuan had put his sword on Emperor Wu's neck. Emperor Wu looked at Jun Linyuan in resignation. The girl came up with the plan herself. Jun Linyuan's eyes glinted coldly. Emperor Wu smiled bitterly. "I didn't know it would be so dangerous. The girl said she could handle it, and I've sent someone to protect her. I've even sent Sidu Mingjing to protect her." Jun Linyuan's aura filled the entire imperial palace. The teenager was simply too terrifying. It was as if he could destroy heaven and earth with a wave of his hand. Even Emperor Wu was intimidated. The Empress Dowager was still sick. Hearing that something had happened to Emperor Wu, she rushed to the study without putting on her outer robe. "Jun, what are you doing?" Only the Empress Dowager dared to enter the study. The door was smashed open, revealing what was going on inside. Empress Dugu looked up involuntarily and was astonished. And she wasn't the only one. Jun Linshan and Jun Wuxia saw it as well. Jun Linyuan's sky destroyer was right at Emperor Wu's throat. He was their emperor. After the initial shock, Empress Dugu was filled with despair. How was she supposed to fight for the throne for Jun Linshan? Even His Majesty couldn't do anything to Jun Linyuan. Jun Linshan paled as well and was on the verge of collapsing. Jun Wuxia tugged at Jun Linshan's sleeve. "Brother Linshan, please don't offend the crown prince again. I'm scared." Who wouldn't be afraid of a murderous fiend? Chapter 36-34, The Fiend 2. The energy Jun Linyuan gave off was terrifying. No one dared to offend him. Jun Wuxia said in a trembling voice, I heard that the old lady of the Hua family was a spiritual saint, but Brother Linyuan cut her throat open and decapitated her. Jun Linshan glared at Jun Wuxia. Stop it! Stop it! Jun Wuxia shuddered. I heard that Hua Wushuang was scared out of her wits. She's like a crazy person now. Brother, if you still want to compete with the crown prince for the throne, I won't help you. Please let me live. Jun Linshan said, Shut up. Stop talking. Empress Duga didn't know what to say. It was obvious that everyone saw Jun Linyuan as a fiend now. The Empress Dowager rushed into the study, grabbed Jun Linyuan, and said sternly, Your Royal Highness, do you have any idea what you're doing? Put down your sword. That's your father. Jun Linyuan ignored her. The Empress Dowager was furious. Jun Linyuan, I order you to put down your sword. The crown prince had pointed his sword at the emperor, and that wasn't usurping the throne. He should be executed. However, the teenager's eyes were cold, and there was a grim look on his face. You can't do that to someone I care so much about. She's not alone. I'll get it back for her. Jun Padian, this is the last time. Putting away his sword, Jun Linyuan turned to leave. Emperor Wu remained silent as he watched Jun Linyuan leave. Emperor, are you all right? Are you hurt? The Empress Dowager was really angry at Jun Linyuan this time. He didn't even talk to her when he left. What's going on with the crown prince? Is he infatuated by Feng Wu? Why is he pointing a sword at his father? How can he do that? I think it's all because of Feng Wu. She's such a jinx. If it hadn't been for her, Yuero wouldn't have died. I hate her so much. The Empress Dowager expressed her anger without hesitation. Mrs. Hua was the Empress Dowager's childhood friend, and the Empress Dowager was the one who had spread the rumor that Hua Wushuang was going to be the crown prince's wife. As a result, the Hua family was almost wiped. Mother! Emperor Wu stared at the Empress Dowager. Watch your language. The Empress Dowager said, This is the Imperial Palace, and I'm the Empress Dowager. What should I say? Emperor Wu gestured at Gao to show the others out. After the others left, Emperor Wu looked at the Empress Dowager and took a deep breath. Mother, haven't you realized it by now? Did the crown prince really aim his sword at me? The Empress Dowager asked, What are you talking about? Emperor Wu closed his eyes in pain. When he opened them again, his eyes were very cold. Mother, didn't you order the Hua family to kill Feng Wu? Emperor Wu finally asked the question. The Empress Dowager stared at Emperor Wu. What are you talking about? I would never do such a thing. Emperor Wu looked at the Empress Dowager. Are you sure? You didn't even give her a hint? The Empress Dowager blanched, but she still shook her head. No, I didn't. Emperor Wu turned away from the Empress Dowager and said seriously, Mrs. Hua is dead, and no one can testify what you did. It doesn't matter if you've given her a hint. It's just that from now on. Chapter 36-35, Master Linghu 1. Emperor Wu stared at the Empress Dowager. But from now on. The Empress Dowager denied it outright. No, I didn't hint at that. I didn't. Emperor Wu rubbed his forehead. All right, if His Royal Highness asks you in the future, just use the same attitude. That rendered the Empress Dowager speechless. Mother, please leave, Emperor Wu said weakly. The Empress Dowager wanted to say something, but she was terrified when she saw the cold look in Emperor Wu's eyes. She seemed to have lost something very important. When Emperor Wu was genuinely angry, the Empress Dowager didn't dare to defy him. She took a few steps toward the door when she heard Emperor Wu's low voice. Feng Wu, a mere spiritual king, fought off over 40 spiritual overlords. In the end, she sent the surviving 20 to the battlefield. With these 20-odd spiritual overlords, the Junwu Empire is gaining ground against our enemy. Mother, Feng Wu is 1,000 times better than you think. The Empress Dowager wanted to say something but hesitated. She had never hinted to Hua Yuero to kill Feng Wu, let alone destroy the Feng clan. Why should she do that? At her age, she didn't like taking lives anymore. She wanted a good reputation. However, was it possible? Had someone really given Hua Yuero a hint in her name? The Empress Dowager decided not to take the blame. She had to look into it. You think about it. Emperor Wu was obviously disappointed with the Empress Dowager. He sat down on the broken stairs and waved at her weakly. The Empress Dowager felt sorry for him. Jun Linyuan left the imperial palace without hesitation. Instead of going back to his residence, he turned around and headed for Wandering Temple. Since Jun Linyuan could tear apart the imperial study, he could do the same to Wandering Temple. The abbot was almost in tears when Jun Linyuan demolished the courtyard behind Wandering Temple, where Master Linghu used to live. He came out in a hurry. "Your Royal Highness, please don't do this. Please don't." Jun Linyuan smirked. Didn't that old monk say that he couldn't leave Wandering Temple? Where did he flee to? Master Linghu was the most capable cultivator of the Junwo Empire and the savior of the empire. No one else but Jun Linyuan dared to talk about him in that way. The abbot smiled bitterly. It's true. Master Linghu isn't in Wandering Temple anymore. No one can tell where he is now. Your Royal Highness, it has something to do with the fate of the Junwo Empire. Please don't ask. Jun Linyuan smirked. He's just a monk. If he doesn't abandon his worldly desires, he'll never reach perfection in his cultivation. The abbot felt his blood curdle. Jun Linyuan said, "If that's the case, what good will Wandering Temple do? Why don't we tear it down?" He was a teenager with the power to destroy heaven and earth. With a wave of his hand, he could move mountains and overturn seas. The abbot really couldn't stop him. Your Royal Highness. Seeing that Jun Linyuan was going to destroy the temple, the abbot said in a hurry, Your Royal Highness, Master Linghu left a pouch behind before he left. The teenager glared at the abbot. The look gave the abbot the creeps. He immediately took out a pouch from his chest pocket and handed it to Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan stared at him. Why didn't you take it out earlier? The abbot smiled bitterly. Master Linghu said that we could only take it out if you really want to destroy the Wandering Temple. Otherwise. Chapter 3636, Master Linghu, 2. Jun Linyuan frowned. Otherwise what? The abbot smiled bitterly. Otherwise, I can't take it out because it would mean that you're not sincere enough. Jun Linyuan wanted to slap someone. The abbot stumbled back. Your Royal Highness, please open it. Is it what you need? Jun Linyuan couldn't be bothered to deal with the abbot anymore. He opened the pouch right away. It was quite a long note. The first line read, Traveling the mortal world will help her to stabilize her cultivation level and reduce the difficulty of the lightning tribulation in the future. Something clicked in Jun Linyuan's head when he saw the words. It was referring to Feng Wu. Feng Wu had made too many breakthroughs in one go, which had made the lightning tribulation so difficult. Jun Linyuan had been worried that Feng Wu would be marked, and the lightning tribulation would all be so difficult in the future. That was so frustrating. But why could traveling in the mortal world reduce the lightning tribulation? Even someone as smart as Jun Linyuan couldn't figure it out for the time being. He went on reading. The second line read, I know Huyen Yanba, a semi-divine medicine refiner, has a divine-level pill. He'll show up at the Northern Yen Palace in 3 months. The look on Jun Linyuan's face was indecipherable. He needed to be in the Northern Yen Palace in 3 months' time. Feng Wu needed to travel the world, so he was taking her with him this time. Jun Linyuan was lost in his thoughts. Should he take Master Linghu's words literally? When Jun Linyuan looked up, he saw that the abbot of Wandering Temple had run away as fast as a rabbit, fearing that Jun Linyuan would beat him up. Back at the residence, Jun Linyuan was still hesitating. As sharp as Feng Wu was, she asked Jun Linyuan when she saw that he was lost in his thoughts. Jun Linyuan had wanted to keep it a secret, but Feng Wu made him hand over the pouch with a few words. Traveling the world? Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan in bewilderment. What does that have anything to do with my lightning tribulation? For the first time in his life, the crown prince shook his head in front of the girl he loved. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. And the second line. Go to the Northern Yan's royal palace in 3 months to see Huyen Yanba. Have you heard of that name before? Jun Linyuan nodded. I have. Feng Wu was surprised. Who is it? Do you remember the last time in the Peace Grassland when someone stopped me from fighting Shui Jibei? Jun Linyuan asked slowly. Feng Wu nodded. Of course I do. He was her third senior brother. Jun Linyuan said, that was Chu Tianshao, the prime minister of the Dongsang Kingdom. He's even more prestigious than the master teacher. He's Mu Jiuzhou's third pupil. Feng Wu nodded. She knew that. From Bu Jingyu's portrait, she also knew that her third senior brother had been looking for her. Jun Linyuan said, Huyen Yanba is Master Mu's sixth pupil. Feng Wu asked, what? Was that her sixth senior brother? Jun Linyuan nodded solemnly. And this Huyen Yanba was the previous emperor of Northern Yen. He was only an emperor for a day before he gave the throne to his nephew, who is the current emperor of Northern Yen. Jun Linyuan frowned. But I've never heard of this Huyen Yanba being a semi-divine medicine refiner. Why does he have such a pill? Did Master Mu leave it with him? But how does Master Linghu know that? And what's his relationship with Huyen Yanba? Jun Linyuan frowned and felt that something was off. Feng Wu thought, does it have something to do with both my sixth senior brother and my beautiful master? Chapter 36-37, Master Linghu, 3. Feng Wu had her doubts about the pouch as well, but little Phoenix was thrilled when she asked it. Oh my! Is it little Yanba? I remember him. When my master brought him back, he was barely 3 years old. He was so dumb and such a slow learner. The others picked on him a lot. But his hard work can make up for his lack of talent. His cultivation was so arduous that he became as capable as your third senior brother. Personality? Well, he's kind and honest. To little Phoenix, Huyen Yanba was a humble man, but he was one of the most powerful men in the world and the pillar of Northern Yen. Because of him, Northern Yen was able to stay as stable as a rock. There were a lot of mineral veins in Northern Yen, but no one dared to take advantage of them. It was all because Northern Yen had such a powerful cultivator. Feng Wu then thought about her beautiful master. With the help of her senior brothers, would it be so much easier for her to find the third and fourth broken star pieces? After all, her senior brothers were all top cultivators. At that thought alone, Feng Wu tugged at Jun Linyuan's wide sleeve. Let's go. Shall we? Of course, he wouldn't turn her down. Sure. Jun Linyuan was the most efficient person Feng Wu had ever met. They had only just decided to leave at noon and everything was ready for their trip that afternoon. Naturally, Feng would go with them. Granny Gong stayed behind to guard the manor. Feng Wu and Feng Xiaoqi met for a while, but before long, Feng Xiaoqi was dragged away by Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu didn't see her mother because she was still cultivating in seclusion. Feng Wu felt uneasy, but she couldn't sense anything, so she had to put it aside for the time being. The most important thing for her now was to cure her broken body and recover her cultivation ability. Otherwise, everything would be for nothing. Hearing the news, Feng Sun arrived as fast as he could. Are you leaving? Take me with you. Feng Sun wouldn't let go of Feng Wu's sleeve. Take me with you. I've never been away from Boss Jun for more than a month. Feng Wu rolled her eyes. Go ask him yourself then. Feng Sun shook his head. No, I won't. He won't listen to anyone but you. 1 word from you is more useful than 10,000 words from me. Dear sister, am I not a good brother to you? Aren't you going to take me with you? Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. We're going to be in danger. Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Going out with Boss Jun is dangerous? Kiddo, do you have so little faith in your future husband? What future husband? Feng Sun, don't call him that. Feng Wu threw a dirty look at him. Feng Sun was astonished. Boss June still hasn't succeeded yet. Feng Wu said, "Don't talk about it again, or I won't take you with me." Feng Sun said, all right. Take me with you, then." Feng Wu smacked her forehead. Was this really her brother, the young lord? Feng that was so proud and respectable in front of all the other young lords. Feng Wu had no choice but to say, fine. But there are 3 rules. 1. You can't make too much noise. Feng Sun nodded immediately. Yes, no problem. Feng Wu said, 2. Don't make trouble. Feng Sun said, of course. Even if you don't kill me, Boss June will. Feng Wu said, 3. You can't do anything I don't want you to do. Chapter 36-38, Masterling Hu 4. Feng Wu said, 3. You can't do anything I don't want you to do. Feng Sun nodded immediately. All right. I'll do it. Just then Jun Linyuan walked in. He had a little boy with him. It was Bao Er. Bao Er looked eagerly at Jun Linyuan, but the teenager shook his head. You can't go. Suppressing her desire, Bao Er nodded and lowered her head. Jun Linyuan said solemnly, take her back. Teach her well these days. Don't miss a day. Granny Gong knew what the Crown Prince was like, and he meant every word. She nodded and led Bao Er away. Seeing the book stuck into Bao Er's belt, Feng Wu was speechless. Feng Wu still remembered her additional task. She had to make sure that Bao Er liked her. That way, her beautiful master would wake up for a longer time, but now was obviously not the time. She would have to wait. Do you want to train Bao Er into a scholar? Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan in bewilderment. Jun Linyuan shook his head. No. Feng Wu said, then why did you make her read so many books? She's not well enough. Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu. She can't cultivate. Feng Wu was confused. How can that be? She has the dragon phoenix blood from you and the divine phoenix blood from me. She should be the most talented person in the world. Why? Jun Linyuan stopped in front of Feng Wu's bed and looked into her eyes. He said in a serious tone, she has 2 rare bloodlines at the same time, but she's just an ordinary person. As expected, her body can't take it. In the end, her body simply sealed them up, making it impossible for her to cultivate. Feng Wu sighed. What a pity. Jun Linyuan was worried that Feng Wu would think too much, so he explained, her parents are just ordinary people and aren't very talented. It's only natural that she can't withstand such great power. I've made plans for her future. Don't worry. Feng Wu nodded. Fearing that Feng Wu would overthink it, Jun Linyuan added, if both parents have strong bloodlines, their babies won't be weak either. A baby born from the dragon phoenix blood and the divine phoenix blood won't be like Bao Er. Feng Wu nodded again, looking distracted. Feng Sun almost felt sorry for Boss Jun. Boss Jun had made it so obvious, but Feng Wu was absent-minded. What Feng Sun didn't know was that Feng Wu was trying to figure out what to say to make Jun Linyuan agree to take Feng Sun with them. Ahem. Feng Sun reminded his silly sister. Feng Wu glanced at Feng Sun. Of course, she remembered. He didn't need to remind her. Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan. Are we leaving this afternoon? Yes. Jun Linyuan's tone remained emotionless when he talked to Feng Wu, but that was as far as he could go. Under normal circumstances, the Crown Prince was the most arrogant person. Feng Wu asked, can we take Feng Sun with us? Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Sun. Feng Sun felt a chill run down his spine. Tugging at Jun Linyuan's sleeve, Feng Wu asked eagerly, can we bring him along? How could Jun Linyuan say no to such a request? The teenager rubbed her head. Yes. Chapter 36-39, Travel 1. The carriage set off in the afternoon. Feng Sun and Feng had to ride their horses, while Feng Wu sat lazily in the carriage. This carriage had definitely undergone shock-absorbing measures. The carriage sped along the way, but Feng Wu didn't feel any bumpiness on the road. The interior of this carriage was more than twice the size of an ordinary one. 2/3 of the space was occupied by a soft couch. Feng Wu could still lie down and even roll around. There were a total of 8 windows, and when they were opened, the sunlight shone on her face, making her sleepy. There were all kinds of mechanisms on the wall, and tea and snacks were all prepared and within Feng Wu's reach. Jun Linyuan only spent a few hours preparing for this trip, but everything was very well prepared. Nothing was out of the way. Jun Linyuan sat in the carriage with Feng Wu. There was a book in his hand. His eyes were lowered and he kept reading. The teenager had well-defined features and was already unbelievably beautiful. Now that the sun was shining on his face, he looked even more ethereal and graceful. It was impossible to describe how beautiful he was. All the spiritual essence in the world seemed to have concentrated on him. The creator really liked him. Sensing Feng Wu's gaze, the teenager looked away from the book. "You're awake." His voice was clear, deep, and refreshing. He didn't look as terrifying as before. Ahem. Feng Wu struggled to get out of bed, but she was too weak. The next second, Jun Linyuan was by her side and put a cushion behind her. The cushion was specially made from the tiniest natural silk cotton. It was so soft that it almost wrapped around Feng Wu. "How are we going to get there?" The two of them were so close that Feng Wu changed the subject involuntarily. The teenager who had dared to point his sword at the emperor carefully tucked Feng Wu in with a duvet, fearing that he might miss anything. He moved carefully and sincerely, as if he was doing something very important. After tucking the duvet in, he sat down, glanced at Feng Wu, and tossed her a booklet. He said coldly, "Read it yourself." Feng Wu thought to herself, "What? He was so gentle when he tucked me in, but he's being so rough now." However, Feng Wu was used to Jun Linyuan's two-faced behavior, so she wasn't offended. Instead, she read the map carefully. They had decided on the time and purpose of their trip. 3 months later, they would meet Huyen Yanba at the Northern Yen Palace. But they hadn't figured out how to get there yet. "What would you have gotten there if it were up to you?" Feng Wu looked up from the map and asked Jun Linyuan curiously. "I'll fly there," Jun Linyuan said succinctly. Feng Wu nodded. She knew it. Jun Linyuan was simply too powerful. As a spiritual saint, he was indeed capable of taking her all the way to Northern Yen by air. Moreover, it would save her a lot of time. "But Master Linghu said that we have to travel the world." Feng Wu grinned at Jun Linyuan. "Are you mad?" Jun Linyuan only looked at her without saying a word. Feng Wu answered for him as she flipped through the booklet. "You must be very angry." Crossing his arms, Jun Linyuan glanced at her. "Why do you say that?" Feng Wu snapped. Chapter 3640, Travel 2. Feng Wu said grumpily, "You hate trouble. Now that I've brought you so much trouble, I bet you don't like me very much." The teenager sat down in front of Feng Wu and kept his gaze on her. Feng Wu lowered her head. "In the end, you're going to travel with me for 3 months. That's not traveling at all. It's so boring. Am I right?" Jun Linyuan kept his gaze on Feng Wu and looked very serious. Feng Wu said, "Why are you looking at me like that? Am I wrong? We're going to meet so many weak people and you're going to be so bored. You won't have that kind of patience. If I were you, I would be so annoyed." "I'm not annoyed." The teenager remained aloof. Feng Wu said, "No one said that you had to go with me to find that medicine, but you still did it. I owe you one, and I'll remember it." Jun Linyuan frowned and narrowed his eyes. Feng Wu was still mumbling. "But since I've sent so many spiritual overlords to help our empire, no matter how reluctant you are, you have to help me. I've done you a great favor." She looked up at Jun Linyuan as she spoke. Her big eyes were clear and bright. Jun Linyuan had never met anyone like her. One moment she was murmuring apologetically, and the next she was making a bold request. "Yes." He couldn't help but rub her head. "I owe you." Now that Feng Wu didn't feel she owed Jun Linyuan anything, she became curious. "I'm going to have a great tour of the Junwo Empire on my way there. You have no idea how hard I've been working in the past decade since I came here. I've never stopped to savor the real world. I haven't had a chance to enjoy anything. Since you came here? Jun Linyuan asked. Ahem. Feng Wu threw a dirty look at Jun Linyuan. That's how long I've been born for. Are you picking on me now? Anyone else who dared to stare at Jun Linyuan would probably be dead by now. However, under Feng Wu's clear gaze, Jun Linyuan didn't say anything and only nodded. Feng Wu said excitedly, Can we not travel by road all the time? We're near the Nanyang River, right? The narrow part of the river is hundreds of meters wide, and the widest part is thousands of meters wide. Hey, how about we take a boat and head west for a while? Jun Linyuan liked to hear Feng Wu's soft voice, so he crossed his arms, raised his chin, and said indifferently, No. As expected, the girl tugged at his sleeve and pleaded with her doe eyes. Please. Jun Linyuan remained silent. Feng Wu grew anxious. Let's go. It's so boring in a carriage. I'm tired of all the scenery around the imperial capital, and the road is so bumpy. It's not very comfortable. Let's take the waterway. It'll only take us a few days. After that, we won't have any waterway on our way west. All right? Jun Linyuan gave her a little tap on the head. You're such a sweet talker. Feng Wu wouldn't admit it. I'm not. It was a negotiation. Negotiation. Chapter 3641, Travel 3. Jun Linyuan only smiled when he heard the girl's protest. Outside, Feng Sun and Feng exchanged looks and both gave each other wry smiles. They decided to let the two of them carry on like this, wondering if this trip would make them realize how they felt about each other. I think Boss Jun has made up his mind. He just won't admit it. He's made it very obvious. Feng Sun lowered his voice. Feng nodded. We'll wait for Miss Wu to admit her true feelings. Well, I won't stay in their way. Feng turned to leave after that. He was soon out of sight. Feng Sun thought to himself, he's an incredible cultivator. Wait, they're still talking about whether to travel by land or water and haven't reached a conclusion yet. Where did Feng? By water. Feng's voice reached Feng Sun's ears. Feng Sun agreed. Every negotiation between Feng Wu and Boss Jun ended with Feng Wu winning. Yongzhou Pier. Feng had the boat ready when they arrived, and he was reporting to Jun Linyuan. Flying Star is His Majesty's dragon boat. It's 13 m tall, 60 m long, and has 4 floors. The top floor consists of the main hall, the inner hall, and the eastern and western courts. The middle floors are richly decorated and have 50 rooms in total. The lower floor. Jun Linyuan nodded. However, the more Feng Wu listened, the more confused she became. Such a big and luxurious dragon boat. How many of us are there? Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan in bewilderment. Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu, but before he could say anything, Feng said, Just the 4 of us. Feng Wu smiled bitterly. Are the 4 of us going to take such a big dragon boat together? That's a lot of attention. Plus, we're here to travel the world, not to show off. She looked eagerly at Jun Linyuan and tugged at his sleeve. Jun Linyuan looked at her in resignation. What do you want, then? The girl smiled, her bright eyes like crescent moons. How about we share a boat with other people? We'll pretend to be ordinary people. Don't ordinary people always share a boat with others? Jun Linyuan rubbed his forehead in resignation. As the crown prince of the empire, he had never known how to share a room with the common people. Jun Linyuan looked at Feng. Feng smiled. I'll make the arrangements, then. After Feng left, Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu in resignation and saw that the girl was very excited. Wherever there are people, there's action. I'd like to see what it's like. Jun Linyuan crossed his arms and said grumpily, You won't like that world. Feng Wu said, But it's very real. Just think about it. You're the crown prince, and everyone will show you the side you prefer when they see you. It's not their true side. But now that we're in the crowd and dressed like ordinary people, everything we see is real. Moreover, Feng Wu gave it some thought and said slowly, I want to know if Master Ling Hu's plan is what I think it is. Jun Linyuan patted her head. I'm glad you like it. Feng Wu glanced at him. Jun Linyuan, you're so fairy-like. You should be more down to earth. The crown prince didn't say a word. Feng Wu said, this is the land you're going to rule in the future. These people are all your people, and you'll only realize that they're real when you're among them. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.